Good afternoon. My name is Lene Palmisano, and I'm the Chair of Committee of the Whole. I'm going to call to order our regular committee meeting for Tuesday, May 24th. At this time, I'll ask the clerk to call the roll to verify the presence of a quorum.
Councilmember Payne.
Present.
Wamsley-Warlaba.
Present.
Greenville.
Present.
Mitoff.
Present.
Ellison.
Here.
Osmond.
Here.
Goodman.
Present.
President Jenkins is absent. Chugtai is absent. Koski.
Present.
Johnson is absent. Chavez.
Present.
Chair Palmisano.
Present.
There are 10 members present.
Let the record reflect that we have a quorum. We have one public hearing on the published agenda today, a proposed staff direction announcement that will be coming to full council, in addition to our reports of committees that have met this cycle. We will begin with our public hearing, which is the consideration of the mayor's nomination of Heather Johnston to the appointed position of city coordinator for a 4-year term. To introduce this item, we've been joined by Mayor Fry, and I invite him to speak on behalf of this nomination. Welcome, Mayor.
Thank you, Madam President, Madam Vice President, and thank you, members of the City Council, for having me today in your consideration of my appointment of Heather Johnston for City Coordinator. Since she accepted this position as acting City Coordinator in July of last year, Heather has shown true character. She's shown conviction in one of the most difficult jobs that we have at City Hall. She's worked her way through now 2 different government and reporting structures, and she's shown, above all, an unwavering love for our city and the staff and employees that make our enterprise extraordinary. Her qualifications, and I encourage you to look at them closely, are beyond reproach. Her credibility among leaders in our community are high, her experience is unmatched, and she's got a reputation that allows her to do the necessary work of leading, which, especially through times like this, is often really difficult. It is controversial. And at times you need to tell people the hard answer of no that they may not want to hear. She is truly among the finest public servants that I have ever had the opportunity to work with, and I'm lucky to have met her. And this isn't just about the city coordinator's office. It's about the future of our city. The government restructure, yes, but also our ability to recruit talented people and talented leaders that have the willingness to step up. And if we are truly honest with ourselves, we could not do this job better than Heather Johnston has. It's hard. You have to be willing to step into the breach of some of the hardest issues that our city experiences. And to be clear, nobody is asking for quiet comfort here. My cabinet is filled with people that want to do the hard work of making our city enterprise an anti-racist culture. That same cabinet is in strong support of Heather Johnston as a leader because they've worked with her through tough issues. She's been there when it's tough, and she doesn't push away from the table because an item gets controversial or there's disagreement, which, especially in these times, there inevitably will be. But what we are asking for here is reason and is fairness, is an acute attention to the facts and the record. And we're looking for a consistent and logical approach as to how we do our business here at City Hall, because I believe that our workforce insists upon it and is deserving of it. So everyone has acknowledged publicly and privately that the challenges that are outlined are bigger than any one single person, elected, city coordinator, department director, or otherwise. They've acknowledged that the tough issues that we're experiencing are bigger than Heather, and certainly bigger than any one person would be able to handle in the 9 or so months that she's been in this active role. Everyone has also acknowledged that we need change, and that change takes time. And there may be an easy answer to make someone who has devoted their life to public service and so many hours in City Hall to the work of change as a scapegoat. There may be an easy answer in doing that, but it's not an honest one. Honesty needs to lead the way today. She has been an exceptional leader, and so many of you have acknowledged that, at least privately. I'm asking private sentiment to also be seen in public. If we're being really honest with ourselves, we'd admit that Heather is the best possible person for this job right now, period. And I ask for your support. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Fry. I understand that we have 24 people signed up at this point in time, unless the city clerk is holding on to more names from me. If there is anyone here who has not signed up but wishes to speak, please just see the clerk at the dais to sign up. You'll each have up to 2 minutes, and I'll ask you to state your name for the record. As a reminder, public hearings must be relevant and not redundant. The testimony here is to speak to the relevance of Ms. Johnston for our city coordinator position. So please address this and speak to things during her tenure as our interim city coordinator, or her past positions, or her aspirations, vision, and credentials. If a person speaking before you has your very same talking points that you'd like to be heard or in the public record, your point has been made. You can simply maybe affirm what the person before you has said. At the conclusion of this public hearing, I'll invite Ms. Johnston to address the committee. So at this time, I'm going to proceed to open the public hearings for the appointment of city coordinator. The first name that I have in front of me who signed up to speak is Mr. Robert Lilligren. And here he is. Welcome, Mr. Lilligren.
Thanks. I didn't know I'd be first. So, Madam Chair, council members, committee members, Mr. Mayor, I'm Robert Lilligren. I am a citizen of the White Earth Ojibwe Nation, and I'm a resident of Loring Heights neighborhood. I live at 1926 Pleasant Avenue, and I'm here today to speak in favor of in support of the appointment of Heather Johnston as the city coordinator in Minneapolis. I speak from experience. I worked with Heather for a number of years in a number of different capacities. Like many of you, I came from backgrounds very different from sitting in this chambers and debating over $1 billion budget every year. I came into office early. I filled a vacancy. So within weeks of getting elected, I was expected to vote on a $1 billion budget, $1 billion plus budget. And it was the support of people like Heather, her department, that really prepared me to be able to do that. And I'm grateful for that. And I think she served the city well in those capacities, different capacities that I worked with her. And as you guys know, as you council members know, and as you will learn, throughout the budget season, it's a complicated process. It's a complicated document, and Heather, as a professional, was just incredible at making sure I knew what I needed to do and knew how to get my priorities represented in that important policy document. We all know things are not okay in Minneapolis. Things are sometimes not even good in Minneapolis. We have a lot of difficult issues and truth-telling to do in the coming years. I served on the city's Truth and Reconciliation Work Group. I look forward to a new era of more robust work toward truth and reconciliation. And as you move from truth to reconciliation, you really can't restore, you really can't find reconciliation until the damage stops. And recent events in the city have shown that our institutional racism is deep and has been very effective at promoting status quo interests. And I know that Heather can lead the effort to address those, and I look forward to supporting that work. And I hope the people here, and especially those who may oppose her appointment, if she becomes city coordinator, stay engaged and continue to help. Thank you, Madam Chair, committee members, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. And to not make everybody out of breath is Robert. I'm going to call the next. I'm going to call the next three names in case there are people out in the hall, so they can just get ready to know that they're next. Sorry about that. The next three names are Elise Ryan, Bill Coughlin, and Elizabeth Glidden. Elise, are you here? Welcome.
Thank Elise Ryan, Madam Chair, Mayor, City Council members, thank you for the opportunity to express my support for Heather Johnston as Minneapolis's next city coordinator. I am the current mayor of Chanhassen. When you think of Chanhassen and compare it to Minneapolis, you may not see the similarities, but there are a few. We love our parks as they are beautiful and bring community together. Second, we share the international icon, Prince Rogers Nelson, is forever tied to both of our cities. And third, we both have been fortunate to have Ms. Johnston as our intern city coordinators. And while our cities may be different in size and demographics, there are qualities that transcend a city but are imperative for a successful leader. Trustworthiness, a desire to bring about a positive change both to internal and external systems and relationships, a strong communication, financial, interpersonal, and organizational skills. These characteristics exemplify Ms. Johnston. During her tenure in Chanhassen, Ms. Johnston immediately went into action. Filling the shoes of a 34-year city manager, Ms. Johnston had to do some situational analysis. She looked into the way it had always been done. She listened to city staff, city council, and residents and began tackling projects. There is no way to adequately describe in 2 minutes her impact and valued contributions, but I would like to share a few key highlights. She implemented a new planning and budgeting process for clarity and transparency, gave decision-making autonomy to employees who felt unheard and undervalued, mended relationships with our Public Works Department, creating a new sense of team. She worked closely with residents who were dissatisfied and wanted to see real change at City Hall, and implemented practices for City Council members to bring forward their ideas and initiatives. Ms. Johnston brought strength, leadership, understanding, and a willingness to lean into change. No one will work harder for the City of Minneapolis, the Minneapolis City staff, and the mayor and council, and Ms. Johnston is absolutely the right pick, and I support her wholeheartedly. Thank you for your time today. Thank you, all of you, for your service to Minneapolis. And Ms. Johnston, we appreciate your willingness to step into this role. We value you, and we know it takes courage. So thank you. Thank you for your time today.
Thank you. Bill Coughlin, and then we'll be followed by Elizabeth Glidden and Steve Kramer. Welcome.
Well, first of all, it's an honor to appear before this great council and the mayor. I'm here to provide the highest endorsement for Heather Johnston's appointment as the city coordinator. My name is Bill Coughlin. I was the elected member of the Burnsville City Council from 2011 to January of 2019. For 5.5 of those years, Heather Johnston was our city manager. So I agree with everything that the mayor has said, that the other speakers have said. Heather is that good. She works wonderfully with both union and non-union folks and with constituents, and she'll work great, as many of you have already seen, with your city council for the next, hopefully, 4 years and maybe thereafter. And I won't be redundant to say all the great things that the others have said, just to tell you she's that good. And I was sorry to see when she decided to spend some time with her two children when she left Burnsville to do that. So thank you very much, and have a good day.
Thank you. Next, we have Elizabeth Glidden, and she'll be followed by Steve Kramer and J.J. Haywood. Welcome.
Hello. Good afternoon, council members. My name is Elizabeth Glidden, and I reside at 4006 Blaisdell in Minneapolis, and I'm here to speak on behalf of the nomination of Heather Johnston. Like former Councilmember Lilligren said, I did have an opportunity to work with Heather Johnston when she was at City Hall, and we were able to work closely together. And so I wanted to mention some things I thought were unique qualities about working with Heather compared to some of my other experiences that are important as you think about this nomination. I think number one to me is that she has been very honest and direct with me, including at times that I needed information and answers. I will say that sometimes it feels very hard to get information at City Hall. And there is nothing more sometimes that you want than to understand how to get those direct answers. And so I very much valued Heather's willingness to be honest, and not when she had a political agenda, but just being honest and direct in answering my questions. Second, I think that she has humility in her role. She will make mistakes, but she will own them. Not every positional leader is willing to do this, and so I appreciate that Heather leads knowing she has flaws, and she needs the input and the counsel of a team to do her work. Finally, I think that Heather is truly someone I interpret as a decision maker and a problem solver. The city has many challenges, and honestly, they do not stop. The nature of city work is there's always a new challenge to address, and she really brings the skill and able to make a decision and move on. City Hall today and the city enterprise, speaking from someone who very much loves this entity, needs love and attention. There are very real harms that need to be addressed that have been brought forward as concerns by city employees. So I want to be direct about that. My ask for any nominee and for Heather Johnston would be that addressing this harm can't be a second-tier issue. It needs to be a first. And that's a challenge as a city coordinator. You have so much upon you. But asking that there's real commitment, real involvement of staff, and expectations that are measured and transparent would be my ask.
Thank you. Next, we have Steve Kramer, followed by J.J. Haywood and Maggieittenhouse. Welcome.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Members of the committee, I'm Steve Kramer, President and CEO of the Downtown Council, 11th Ward resident in the Northrop neighborhood, and I am also here in support of the nomination of Heather Johnston as City Coordinator. She's eminently qualified. She's proven herself already on the job under extraordinarily difficult circumstances, and I'm here as an unabashed supporter of her. But this is a difficult public hearing. My gut's turning a little bit because I've been a council member, I've been a city department head, I've run other organizations, I've chaired boards of organizations, experiencing the environment fueled by the types of comments you've been receiving. It's hard for you, it's hard for the people who feel aggrieved, and it sure as hell is hard for Ms. Johnston. Here's my perspective on this dynamic that you're dealing with. You need to look for good faith in all the comments you're hearing from all different perspectives. And even in good faith, there will be a clash of viewpoints. That's what makes it hard. But it's hard in our city right now. The mayor said that, Robert said that. We all know it. We all experience it, usually every day, like today. And it isn't for everybody. Some folks have opted out, and I can't blame them. It's hard right now. Heather Johnston hasn't opted out. She wants to continue to be part of the solution. She's not asking for extra credit for that commitment, just the opportunity, with your support along with the mayor's, to continue to do the work. My experience tells me the city would be better off if you agree with Mayor Fry and give her that chance. And I sincerely hope you will. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we invite up J.J. Haywood, followed by Maggieittenhouse, and then Latonya Green. Welcome.
Hi, good afternoon, council members. Thank you for the opportunity to share some thoughts on the appointment of Heather Johnston. My name is J.J. Haywood, and I'm a Minneapolis resident, and I was the co-chair of the Mayor's Government Structure Work Group. And I'm here today to share some of the information about how the work group viewed the position of city coordinator and eventually a chief administrative officer. We saw the coordination role as one of the most important positions within the enterprise, given its central responsibility for the operations and management of other city departments. The role gives the city the benefit of both a professional administrator for internal operations and management and an experienced chief for policy development and decision-making with strong community connections focused on policy. The position also provides delegation of authority to act on behalf of the city for specific functions, whether operation and management or policy and decision-making. It provides adequate high-level staff to support the city for both operational and management functions, as well as policy and coordination functions. Finally, the role helps reduce the potential for bottlenecks and provides structured systems for reporting, monitoring, and evaluation to support the mayor and the council's directions. Ms. Johnston has had a distinguished career in the federal, state, and city government that absolutely qualifies her to serve Minneapolis as its city coordinator. Her time as the Minneapolis budget officer also makes her uniquely qualified to support the city during this time as we have to build back after the devastating impact of the COVID-19 pandemic. Her service on the governing board of the Financial Officers of America and election as its national president in 2015-16 underline her stellar resume and her professional capacity to serve the city. So I am fully in support, and I thank you for the opportunity to speak today.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Next, we have Maggieittenhouse, followed by Latonya Green, and then Kristin Engel. Welcome.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Maggieittenhouse. I'm a Ward 11 resident. I'm here to ask today that you vote against the appointment of Heather Johnston as a Minneapolis City Coordinator and vote what's for initially promised by our mayor, a transparent search process for this incredibly powerful and influential role. I'm a director at a voting rights organization that is majority BIPOC and BIPOC-led. I previously worked at Target, Starbucks, and Amazon and have repeatedly seen anti-racism initiatives fail. The reason anti-racist principles and structures are succeeding in my current organization is because we have a committed, skilled leader who is doing the work to engage with staff to create a justice-oriented workplace. What city staff have outlined about Heather Johnston, as well as a long line of city coordinators, it is not personal, clearly shows that the city has never prioritized or put its stated values around creating a safe, supported workplace for all staff, especially Black and brown staff, into practice. This is the moment, as those who are committed to moving the city towards its stated values, that you must listen to what staff are saying. The deep, systemic cultural change required in the city cannot be achieved by only an outside consultant. It requires a leader, skilled and able to build systems and processes that center the humanity of all staff members and root out racism in how the city functions. We must find a leader who can do that. Heather Johnston may be a very talented manager in some aspects, but she's not right for this position today. Councilman Borkowski is my council member, and I want to end by speaking to you directly. You've spoken about your past experience in recruiting and the importance of finding the right person for the right moment for the right job. I ask you to consider what a vote to install a leader into a role for 4 years that staff have raised concerns about would do, how it would impact the morale, safety, and ability for city staff to do the work that is so needed and that we all care about. This is the moment to live your stated values of centering justice and equity in all that the city does and recognizing how important who we pick to lead this office is in achieving those goals. I urge you to vote no. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Latonya Green, followed by Kristin Engel and Todd Schumann. Welcome.
Good afternoon, Chair, committee members, and the Mayor. Thank you for the opportunity to speak today. I'm happy to be back in the city of Minneapolis. I spent 19 years here, and I thank you for that. I'm here to speak in support of the nomination of Heather Johnston as the city coordinator. Again, I'm Latonya Green, and I'm currently the finance director at the city of Brooklyn Park. But as I mentioned, my career with the city was almost 19 years, and for 8 of those years, I worked with Ms. Johnston. She either directed my work or she was a mentor. When I first worked with Ms. Johnston, she had a high expectation of our work team. Even though she had those high expectations, she was never far from rolling up her sleeve and being willing to help us to get through whatever difficult task that we had before us. We worked many late nights ensuring that the taxpayers, the mayor, and the city council received the budget they expected at the lowest tax rate possible. Notice I didn't say that we didn't have no budget increases, because many of those years we did, but there were some years that we did have an expectation from council and the mayor that we would have a 0 budget increase, and Ms. Johnston and the team worked with the mayor and council to make sure that that came to fruition. Ms. Johnston always gave her team credit when doing the work, even though she could have taken the credit all for herself. She offered constructive criticism at a time when I really needed it most, because I was getting that, you're doing a very good job, but I wasn't growing. And Ms. Johnston made sure that I was able to do that. She pushed me beyond my comfort level. I heard others mention that she was the president of the GFOA, which is the Government Finance Officers Association. She encouraged them to have me to be a speaker at the National Council at the annual conference, and I did that, and I spoke to over 600 people of that organization that attended my session. I taught a week-long class with other of my peers from different cities throughout the United States and Canada at Ms. Johnston's recommendation. In addition, she added me to the nomination committee of that organization so that I could be a person that would help to pick the next president of that organization. And that organization does not have many people that look like me in it because it's the finance. We don't have a lot of people that's in a certain level of finance. And I was able to help pick the next president for 3 years. So I was actually happy and honored to serve in that capacity, and I really think, and I don't think that would have been made possible if Ms. Johnston had nominated me to be on that committee and to be able to have a diverse voice sitting at that table.
Thank you.
I think in order to be, am I over time?
I need you to wrap up.
Okay, I will. I'm almost done. I think a great city coordinator, the person needs to be trustworthy, respectful, ethical, approachable, have the utmost integrity, and build partnerships within and outside the city. But most of all, I think that person needs to be held accountable and to hold other people accountable. And I think Ms. Johnston has possessed all of those attributes. And if you select Ms. Johnston to be the next city coordinator, I think you would do the city justice. I was going to talk about, I know what other people are saying, but since I'm out of my time, I will not go into that. But I just want to thank everybody for giving me this opportunity. And, I really thank you for doing that. Thank you.
Thank you, and you are welcome to submit those comments to the clerk, and they can become part of the public record, and we can all receive your thoughts there. Thank you so much. Next, we have Kristin Engel, followed by Todd Schumann and Kevin Calaba. Welcome.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Madam Chair and members of the committee. My name is Kristin Engel, and I am a Ward 13 Minneapolis resident. Earlier this month, I wrote to my council member Vice President Palmisano, about my concerns about the appointment of Heather Johnston. And I'm here today to stand with the 65 staff from the city coordinator's office and beyond to demand that the council not move forward with her permanent appointment. Instead, council members should listen to staffers and work to align themselves with the city's values of equity, transparency, and health. Council, in collaboration with these staffers, should find a city coordinator who is prepared, willing, and ready to transform a toxic racist system within the city. It is clear this is not Heather Johnston. Our city needs change, and yes, change takes time, but it requires the right leadership to lead the way. In many ways, the staff's experience depicted in their thoughtful letters and demands mirror the findings in the Minnesota Department of Human Rights report about the racist culture within another city department, the MPD. I'm reminded that MPD's culture didn't happen in a vacuum. That culture is reinforced by the city enterprise itself. This is just another example of how the city's embedded racist culture is experienced by not only the residents that encounter the brunt of the city's force, but in the city's workplace itself. You've heard from BIPOC city staff, and you're aware of the impact that the appointment will make. I urge you to act with urgency, coordination, and intentionality, something that city leaders have failed to do with MPD. But that work can start today, with your leadership in voting against the appointment of Heather Johnston. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Todd Schumann, Kevin Calaba, and Elena Lippel Johnson.
Good afternoon, everyone. Chair Palmisano, Committee of the Whole members. My name is Todd Schumann. I'm a Ward 3 resident. My pronouns are he, him, and I'm here representing the Southwest Alliance for Equity. I'm here today to speak in opposition to the appointment of Heather Johnston as the Minneapolis City Coordinator. The fact that we're even having this conversation today is baffling to me. Dozens of city employees, past and present, have testified about their negative experiences working for and with Ms. Johnston. They have risked censure and reprisals to go on the record, describing the toxic work culture she fostered during her term as interim coordinator by failing to address the very real and legitimate complaints raised by city staff. It is long past time for the city to start believing people of color, believing workers, when they share incidents of discrimination and dismissal in the workplace. It should not take the complete disintegration of a department, as we saw with the Division of Race and Equity, or a decree from on high, as we saw with the Minneapolis Police Department, before this city actually confronts the racism that pervades its system of government. The passage of last year's government structure charter amendment cannot be seen as an opportunity for the city council to abdicate all responsibility over city operations. On the contrary, it demands an even more thoughtful use of the few remaining avenues that this body has to shape how the city conducts its business, in this case, the approval of mayoral nominees. Voting yes on Ms. Johnston's appointment guarantees that a reckoning will befall this department. No consulting firm or independent agency is going to be able to resolve this conflict when half the department has no faith in its leadership. Maybe there'll be another exodus of very qualified BIPOC staff. Maybe there'll be another investigation from a state agency. Who can say? But whatever the outcome, your constituents will see that the fallout, the warnings that were offered to you today and in writing by the staff, and that you chose to do nothing. Thank you.
Next, we have Kevin Kalaba, followed by Eliana Lippel Johnson, followed by Carol Becker. Welcome.
Hello, good afternoon, Chair, Mayor, and the Council. My name is Kevin Kalaba, and I live at 1929 Ewing Avenue South. I'm here today as a concerned citizen to stand with staff from the City Coordinator's Office. We demand the Council not appoint Heather Johnston and instead initiate a transparent search process and immediately partner with City staff to start meeting their demands. This is important to me because there is no true justice until every voice is heard. And from what I understand, there are many, many voices, particularly from Black and brown folks, not being heard, left unvalidated and alone. And that is not good enough. I think we've seen over and over that it's not good enough. Our city needs structural changes. As those before have stated, those changes start today by not appointing Heather Johnston, which, as has been mentioned, is best practice to have an open and transparent appointment process. City staff wrote a letter with 39 demands to address the racist, toxic work environment. Those issues are structural. Staff are not only asking to block an appointment, but interim Johnston caused or continued many of these issues. Pushing her appointment forward sweeps these problems under the rug, dismisses the expertise of city staff, and upholds white supremacy and the status quo of the city. Change can start right here, right now at this hearing. Thank you.
Next, we have Eliana Lippel Johnson, followed by Carol Becker and Marty Rybak.
Hello, good afternoon. My name is Eliana Lippel Johnson. I live in Linden Hills with my family. I'm a Ward 13 resident. I'm here today to ask you to oppose the confirmation of Ms. Johnston as our next permanent city coordinator. Yesterday afternoon, I took my daughter to George Floyd Square to listen to Brass Solidarity rehearse for this weekend, which is the 2nd anniversary of the murder of George Floyd. While I was sitting there and listening to them play, a little girl on rollerblades came by selling Black Lives Matter bracelets. And she told me her name was Innocence. And it made me think about how innocent our children are in Minneapolis and how they deserve better from us. It is our job to change course. We know we have a racist city. We know we have a racist state. If you have 65 former and current staffers saying, we oppose the nomination of Heather Johnston, listen to them. Listen to them. If they want a fair, transparent, nationwide search, let's do that. Maybe Heather Johnston will turn out to be the right candidate. If so, she'll have more credibility going into the role. But it just seems incredibly unfortunate that you'd see that many former and current staff saying, hello, we have a toxic workplace culture, we're exhausted, and we want change, and for you to turn away and not listen to them. I know you've heard from officials from Chanhassen and Burnsville talking about Heather Johnston. Does what they say have more weight than the current staff that are overseen by Ms. Johnston? Thank you.
Next up is Carol Becker, followed by Marty Rybak and Howard Dotson.
Hi, I'm Carol Becker. You may have heard of me. Some of you I worked with to help get elected. Some of you opposed. It's okay. But I've been doing this a long time. So I'm going to tell you a couple things you're going to need to know. If you want change, and you were all elected to get change, you need somebody who understands systems. Because this stuff isn't just happening all by itself. That there are systems and processes and structures that are creating the outcomes that are happening. You need somebody who understands those, and Heather has that in spades. She worked here, she worked other places, she understands, she's got the credentials, she's got all the knowledge about what needs to happen and how it can be done. Second, you need somebody who deeply understands money, because you guys are going to want to get stuff done, and I'll tell you, I've already been talking to some of you, and you don't understand money and how it works. You need somebody who's got that expertise. She already understands the city budget because she did it. So if you think that you're going to find somebody else somewhere in some magical place that understands the city systems and processes, understands the city budget, you're not gonna. You're just not gonna. Third thing I'm going to tell you is if you're going to be successful, you're going to need to have the support of professional staff, because they're the ones that are going to uplift you. You are not going to be able to do this work all by yourself. And you need good professional staff and people who understand that line between what is policy and what is professional, especially now as you are setting the norms for our new governmental structure. She is an amazingly professional person. I've worked with her. It isn't theoretical. I didn't read it on email or, some Facebook page. I've worked with her. And I can tell you, she's amazingly professional. She will know where that line is between what your job is and what her job is, and she will uplift you so you can be effective in the position that you need to be to get something done. You're not here long in those seats, and you got to get it done. You need somebody who can do it. Heather can do that for you. So I'm here to speak to support her. And for the people who think 6 months is enough to turn a whole culture around, you're crazy. Kind of change that city needs is much longer than that. You need somebody who can do it. Step in today. It's Heather Johnston. Just hire her, please. Thanks.
Next, we have Marty Rybak, followed by Howard Dotson, followed by Jason Garcia. Welcome, former mayor.
Good afternoon. I'm Marty Rybak. I'm a Minneapolis resident. I want to say thank you to a city council that is wrestling with issues well beyond issues that any of us ever faced here. And I think about you often because you have been thrown issues and you have also chosen to disrupt issues that have wrestled and been dealt with way, way too long in the city. But there is one issue where you are in a much better position than your counterparts were a decade ago. This city is in dramatically better financial position today than it was a decade ago, and there are lots of reasons for that, but one of the very big reasons is actually Heather Johnston. And I know that from having sat in a room with her, Pat Bourne, you saw back, you heard Latonya, we would sit in a room for hours after hours after hours addressing issues that seemed absolutely insurmountable to figure out some way to take this city and get it back on a strong financial path. Hour after hour after hour, I could look across the table at Heather and every single time get not only her incredible intelligence, but her morality and her clarity. Never once did I ever feel that she deviated from what she felt was the right thing to do. Never once did I feel she was trying to make me comfortable because she made me damn uncomfortable in that room, and that was her job. She knew how to deal with money, but that's not what I'm here to talk about. What I want you to think about is the moment you are at right now. This city feels a lot of different things and there are a lot of different voices, but there is an overwhelming need and desire right now to address the issues that have been left too long, especially about equity in this city. We have different paths, but what is clear is you set the policy. The city coordinator sets the direction and figures out how to make these very complex levers of government work on that behalf. Now, I can tell you, Heather is not a political appointee. In the entire time I dealt with her, she only advocated for one thing, and it was to have verbal cues at traffic lights so that they would be more helpful to people with disabilities. That's the only lobbying job she ever did. So the final point I want to make for you is, as you navigate through some of the toughest issues we've ever had, one of the easiest appointments I think you could make is this one, with somebody who understands how to make government work for people. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Howard Dotson, followed by Jason Garcia, and then Angela Williams. Welcome.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Thank you for serving the city of Minneapolis, council members, mayor. I've been a chaplain and art therapist for 23 years. I've worked as a police chaplain for 4 different departments. I've worked closely with city managers. I know how important their role is. And right now, the city needs stability. We're still recovering from so much. I was nearly shot downtown Minneapolis when I was going to the Amy Grant concert. I helped officers responding to that to identify the vehicles that they needed to run down to make sure that they weren't the shooter. So it's very real to me what's facing the city. I want Minneapolis to be known for something else other than violence. So I hope you're appointed, and I invite you to the American Ukrainian Community Center, because we have a medical team that's working on a cargo plane mission to Poland. The trauma surgeons in Odessa and Kyiv told Dr. Burnett at Regions, we don't have the same tools you have. My brothers are dying on the table. They're bleeding out because they don't have those tools. So I'm asking the city to join us for the Minnesota congressional delegation, for the president to give us that plane so my brothers can go home when the war is over. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Jason Garcia, followed by Angela Williams, and then Kelly Mullman. Welcome.
Thank you, Madam Chair. May I ask a favor to allow somebody to speak who is on a much tighter time crunch than myself to switch spots with
I
me?
think that would be all right. Yeah, you're looking to switch spots with him. Go ahead.
Her name is Zhang.
Lolinda John, welcome.
Hello. My name is Lolinda Zhang, and I'm a former program manager in the Division of Race and Equity and a resident of Ward 9. I am here today to stand with staff from the City Coordinator's Office. We demand the council not appoint Heather Johnston and instead initiate a transparent search process. I'd like to start with a not-so-humble brag. I'm a proud daughter of Hmong refugees. I'm a graduate of a top-tier policy school, and I've worked for think tanks and the state prior to my employment with the city of Minneapolis. This goes to say that I'm well-versed in professional, predominantly white spaces where I'm expected to outperform my white counterparts and code switch from meeting to meeting. However, the city of Minneapolis, specifically my experience in the city coordinator's office, perpetuates a profoundly unjust and unsafe work environment. I have firsthand experience of what inept leadership in the city coordinator's office results in. For over 2 years, I sat in on meetings with staff and department leadership where I was continuously ignored and belittled. We, the Division of Race and Equity, were invited to the table but were never listened to. We were a prop to the city. They could point to our division and say we have an entire office of majority BIPOC staff working on equity, but in reality, we did not hold any real authority, nor did we have decision-making power. The leadership in the city coordinator's office was well aware of how BIPOC staff were treated, so much so that they made promises of change, promises that included bringing in an outsider to facilitate and implement those changes, and hosting conversations with HR to gather data on our experiences. Years went by and different coordinators came and went, and none of these promises were kept. Again, this isn't just about interim coordinator Johnston. It's about a system that preserves and endorses white supremacy. This isn't time for business as usual. City leadership has a chance to pause, to address the harm, and ensure that a leader is appointed to his best position to lead through that process. If a transparent search process for a qualified candidate is not implemented, staff will continue to leave the city in a mass exodus, and the city will continue to fall short on meeting community needs. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker is Angela Williams, followed by Kelly Mullman, followed by Tony Hauser. Welcome.
Hello, my name is Angela Williams. I am a Ward 4 resident. I'm here today to speak against the appointment of Heather Johnston. And first of all, I want to say this is not personal against her as a person. I'm sure you're a lovely person. This ain't got nothing to do with that. What this has to do with racial equity in a system of white supremacy, of a white supremacy enterprise. So everybody, all these white folks that came up to here, they didn't say one thing about what she would do to help with race and equity. They didn't give us anything. So what they're saying is most of them are just her friends. So what I want to say is, first of all, Mr. Mayor, white people are not the future of this city. And so I want to say, as a black woman, I walk around every day nervous, on edge, and anxious because of the trauma of hate at the hands of white supremacy. So what I'm trying to say is, just to reiterate, she getting all this support about her character. What has she done in this 9 months that she's been here? Where's the agenda? What is going on here that we have to, 65 people got to say, hey, this is not right. This is not personal against her. This is to address a system of racial equity that has been like ostracized. And so what I want to say, and I want to say this to black folks that represent city council or people of color, whatever, they come up with a different name for us all the time. So if you black, you know why we here. You black, you've been treated that way. If you black, then you know the system, you know the propensity of the culture of racism under the leadership of Mayor Fry. You know what I'm saying? White people, and I'm gonna say this, everything you love is because of black people. Everything. And so I just wanna say that if you're black and you're supposed to fight the power, then fight the power in black. Hold Ms. Johnston accountable for her lack of leadership. I'm sure she's done a budget. Mr. Mayor, or whoever just said something about a budget. This ain't got nothing to do with no budget. This got everything to do with how people, black people and people of color are being treated in a system that's supposed to work for everybody. The city of Minneapolis has a mission statement. Councilmember Jenkins and Cunningham,
I need you to wrap up.
Wrote a resolution about the culture. Why y'all not listening? Why y'all not listening? This ain't nothing personal. I gotta keep saying it. This ain't nothing personal. Nothing. It's got everything to do with gatekeeping. That's all this is. And so I'm just letting y'all know, at election time, this is not gonna go unnoticed. I'm trying to tell you. Because if you
I need you to wrap up.
I know, I'm wrapping it up right now. I'm wrapping it up. So right now, if I'm telling you, if I'm saying this, if you knocked on my door to talk to me about getting my vote and you care so much about me and you running your platform on racial equity and diversity, equity, inclusion, everybody like to throw that around. If that's what you came and knocked on my door to talk about and you're not doing that, I'm gonna remember that going forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Next we have Kelly Mullman, Tony Hauser, followed by Cassidy Gardner. Welcome.
Good afternoon, Council Vice President Paul Masano and council members. My name is Kelly Mullman. I use she, her pronouns. I've been a city staff member in the coordinator's office for 7 years. I'm also a Ward 6 resident. I'm here to ask for your leadership to take the concerns of Black employees seriously and to do something to address our racist culture in the city. It has been documented by staff. It has been documented by the Minnesota Department of Human Rights report. And today, that action starts with voting no on the appointment of Interim Coordinator Johnston's appointment. You may be wondering, why now? If Interim Coordinator Johnston inherited the toxic racist culture, why didn't we speak up with the past coordinators? First, we did. I've been through 4 coordinators now in my 7 years at the city. Staff attempted to raise questions and concerns at every turn. We hoped that Coordinator Johnston would be different. However, the response staff have had from Coordinator Johnston to our concerns over the past 9 months has not only been lacking, but harmful. She told staff in a meeting last fall that everyone should be polite in the workplace in response to concerns of race-based microaggressions. We submitted our demands to Interim Coordinator Johnston, and we were referred to HR. After working for the city for over the last 2 years of racial reckoning and facing yet another leader who is not equipped to lead us through these challenging times, we have no other recourse. Our only option is to leave the jobs that we are passionate about, and we're fighting to stay. A vote to confirm Heather in the face of an active HR investigation and without a competitive search process is a vote for the status quo. It is a vote that co-signs the harms perpetuated by past and present city coordinators that so many of you have acknowledged as real. A vote that affirms the mayor's lack of due diligence in nominating the most powerful unelected position in the city. It is quite simply a vote to deny the humanity and dignity of staff who tirelessly serve the city and its residents every day. We urge you not to confirm Interim Coordinator Johnston and to work together to develop a recruitment process like the one detailed in our demands, a recruitment process that she can take part in. Thank you.
Thank you. Tony Hauser, Cassidy Gardner, followed by Gina OBrien.
Good afternoon, Chair Palmisano, committee members, and Mr. Mayor. My name is Tony Hauser, and I am the Supervisor of Emergency Preparedness and Response in the Minneapolis Health Department. I am also a resident of Ward 4 in the McKinley neighborhood. I'm speaking today as a city employee who works in emergency preparedness, and I'm not representing my department or any other organization. Over the last few years, I have seen how the environment in the city coordinator's office has been detrimental to staff. Psychological safety is a belief that one will not be punished or humiliated for speaking up with ideas, questions, concerns, or mistakes. It is clear to me that my colleagues are not working in an environment of psychological safety, and I believe that the city has a responsibility to care for and support our employees by directly addressing the causes of their distress. The toxic culture has directly and negatively impacted our work in public health, emergency preparedness, and response. Much of what we do in emergency preparedness is dependent on strong relationships with our partners. The loss of dedicated, experienced staff, either through involuntary removals or dissatisfaction with working conditions, means that those relationships are severed, and the institutional knowledge of the work we've done together is lost, and we cannot afford for that to continue. As the world has witnessed over the last 2.5 years, it is not an easy thing to respond to a public health emergency. In order to do so effectively, we rely on city staff for guidance, technical expertise, support, and participation. What we ask of them is not easy or simple. Because of this, it is vital to have city leaders who understand the assets we have in our public servants. Over the last few months, I've had the privilege of working with a number of staff from the city coordinator's office on the development of resilience hubs in the city. Once in place, these resilience hubs will increase our capacity and ability to support community preparedness for public health emergencies. The irony is that city staff, while working with community organizations to identify what it means for them to be resilient, have simultaneously been trying to get the city government to address the trauma they experience every day.
Thank you. I need you to wrap up.
I can be wrapped up. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Next, we have Cassidy Gardner, Gina OBrien, followed by Jonathan WilliamsKinsell.
Good afternoon, Chair Palmisano, council members, Mr. Mayor. My name is Cassidy Gardner, she, her, or they, them pronouns. And I am both a Minneapolis resident, Ward 6, and Thursday marks my 10-year anniversary as a City of Minneapolis employee. It also represents my last day with the city. I'm here today to stand with staff from the city coordinator's office, and I oppose the appointment of Heather Johnston. There's 2 key points I want to make here. One is that we've heard that she needs time to address culture, but there are indeed things she has done that has stopped the work in its tracks. The second thing is that the moment calls for something different. I have no doubt that Heather is a talented budgeter and that she has those skills. But if we needed a CFO, We wouldn't put in a mechanic. Right now, we need someone who understands racial equity. We need someone to lead with that lens, and she is not it. In the summer of last year, there was a plan to strengthen the authority of the Office of Race Equity, and it was set into motion. It was led by Black women here in the city of Minneapolis. My division, the Civil Rights Equity Division, was set to merge with the Office of Race Equity in order to create a Department of Race Equity, to elevate that work at the level equal to all of our other department heads. In October, I took a leave of absence. When I returned, those Black leaders were gone. Heather was interim. The ordinance had been stalled. Staff had been reallocated from my office, and we heard no more about an office or a Department of Race Equity. You cannot tell me that that is a symptom of something that she inherited. She didn't inherit it, she stopped it. Now I'm gonna speak to my white colleagues up here, my white people. You're my people. I struggle with the right thing to do often. Am I speaking for Black people? Am I speaking with Black people? It's hard. This is not hard. You have an opportunity to stand by and to listen to Black and brown bodies. All of you have said that you are allies. You have said that you stand for racial equity. You must, if you are going to hold that name, listen to Black and brown people. The solutions are here. You don't even have to think about it. You don't have to find the problem. You don't even have to come up with the answer.
I need you to
They're
wrap
here.
up.
Thank you.
Next, we have Gina OBrien, Jonathan WilliamsKinsell, and Trachtenberg.
Council Vice President Palmisano and committee members and Mayor Fry. My name is Gina OBrien, and I'm a program manager in the City Coordinator's Office and a Ward 4 resident. I am here to ask you to vote no to Mayor Fry's nomination of Heather Johnston for City Coordinator. Instead, please update the job qualifications, conduct a competitive search process that Mayor Fry promised, and partner with us to start meeting our other demands to address the racist city culture that we endure. Much of the argument in support of Heather is that these issues we raised existed before she got here. While issues did exist before Heather arrived, it is important to highlight the direct harm that she has caused. Heather has dismissed concerns of Black staff while addressing those of white staff, spoken to Black staff inappropriately in meetings, consistently excluded Black staff from meetings concerning our work, ignored attempts to include AREA in the review of our shifting government structure, among other harms. This is a both-and situation. We've heard from multiple white folks and folks in leadership positions about how great Heather is to work with, and I believe that that is true. But none of these people report to her. Do you even care about the experiences of staff who work below her, especially Black and brown staff? I refuse to accept white people telling me how competent she is at racial equity work when you don't experience racism. 9 months is plenty of time to engage with us. What examples have you, Mayor Fry, given, or you, Heather, about how you have addressed the issues here, how you've addressed the issues that we have raised in a 21-page document with evidence? We, the staff who stand before you and who have signed in support, are who council looks to make these anti-racist aspirations a reality. Listen to us. There's an active HR investigation out against her. You have 21 pages of evidence, and no one in support of her, including herself, can refute it. There is no neutrality in this vote. A vote to confirm Heather is a vote to deny our humanity and dignity. We know what we risk by organizing together, and we all stand here steadfast in that commitment to justice. I hope you all choose to stand with us and help us create the anti-racist culture that you envisioned 2 years ago. And if Heather is as qualified as Mayor Fry claims, then there should be no issue with her competing in a competitive and transparent search. Thank you.
Next, we have Jonathan WilliamsKinsell, followed by Trachtenberg, followed by Pat Bourne.
Mayor Fry, Council Vice President Palmisano, City Council. My name is Jonathan WilliamsKinsell. I'm a resident of the Whittier neighborhood and a program manager in the City Coordinator's Office. I come before you today asking that you vote no to the nomination of interim coordinator Heather Johnston to City Coordinator. There's a belief among some people in this room that the efforts of current and former staff are an attack on Interim Coordinator Johnston. I want to tell you it's not. I've had the opportunity to work under her direction since August of 2021 and believe that she lacks the necessary competencies to provide staff in the coordinator's office and enterprise with a safe and anti-racist workplace. The 21-page document presented to this elected body and the public is evidence of a 9-month pattern of practice from the Interim Coordinator Johnston failing to address the pleas of staff for her to improve the working environment and the role that the city coordinator position continues to play in perpetuating harms to staff, particularly Black staff. The escalation by current and former employees is due to the loss of confidence in Interim Coordinator Johnston's leadership. Interim Coordinator Johnston, upon the announcement of your appointment, the staff were excited about the opportunity to work under you. After our experiences with the previous 2 coordinators, we thought that you would be a breath of fresh air, that you would remove barriers to staff's abilities to do their jobs, that Black and BIPOC staff would no longer have to jump hurdles to complete their work, that we would no longer be undermined or dismissed by some of our colleagues. Instead, you rejected our pleas and continue to perpetuate the behaviors of previous city coordinators. Interim Johnston, we have never asked for a third-party mediator. We asked for your leadership. We asked you to cultivate an environment where staff can be successful. We asked you to listen down and speak up. Staff jeopardized their professional reputations and careers because of the lack of leadership from you. We have so much to lose, yet we press forward for changing this organization because it's crucial. There is no benefit for me to come up here. There's no win for me to come up here. Mayor Fry, Council Vice President, and City Council, I ask you to not recommend Interim Coordinator Johnston to the appointment of City Coordinator.
Thank you. We have Trachtenberg, followed by Pat Bourne, followed by the next page, Nicole Weiler.
Thank you, Madam Chair, Mayor Fry, and committee members. My name is Trachtenberg. I am a Coordinator's Office employee and a Ward 6 resident. I'm here to reiterate our demand and plea that the council not appoint Heather Johnston and instead initiate a transparent search process and immediately partner with us to start meeting our other 38 demands around systemic white supremacy culture. My experience trying to do equity work in the coordinator's office has more than burned me out. It has left me questioning my sense of reality. It involves a lot of crying and lying on the office floor violently shaking, and it has since my first month on the job. My therapist and friends are trying to convince me to quit. Every single coworker I started with in our office has already quit. Please take a moment to feel that grief with me, and then remember it is avoidable. Joy Marsh, former Director of Race and Equity, has joined us today. She wrote to you all, "The culture is toxic, and city leadership can either honor the voices of oppressed and do something to change it, or you can continue to operate with benign neglect, treating BIPOC staff as interchangeable cogs that can be replaced with those who may be more accommodating when the last crew, weary of the toll of the harm, chooses to leave. Today feels different, though. Today feels like a moment when some especially brave staff have chosen to set aside their comfort and speak out in the face of inequities. Interim Coordinator Johnston, I will say directly to you, but into the mic, this isn't personal, but when I was the only staff left in race equity and fighting to get any voice at the table, you told me regularly that I shouldn't be in various conversations, even just to create the continuity until our new director was here. When I tried to offer extra data on racial equity impacts of some of our city's largest plans, you told me it wasn't necessary and didn't incorporate it into the work. Mayor and council, we are giving you an opportunity. You can create a future where the trauma of the past 2 years leads you to act differently. A future where you hold yourself to the highest standards of how this city selects its leadership and engages with staff. A future where you know that it is the right thing, and if nothing else, a better PR move, to listen to staff and change your plans than to dig in your heels and move forward as we get louder in opposition. We are talking about murder, traumatized staff, a city that burned. We are asking for the bare minimum in response to that, and it feels violent to be left begging for that. And as Jonathan said, we do not enjoy this risk to our jobs. We have also, many of us, filed MDHR reports of discrimination in an attempt to protect ourselves against the retaliation we anticipate. I hope this work is worth our time. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Pat Bourne, followed by Nicole Weiler, and then Grace Waltz.
Mr. Mayor, Council Vice President, council members, I'm Pat Bourne. I'm a resident of the 3rd Ward. I've known Heather for almost 20 years, starting when she was appointed the city's budget director during my service as the city's chief financial officer. She conducts her work with high ethical standards and will treat others equitably with fairness and respect. She will also expect these standards from others. The city needs Heather now. The city faces multiple challenges: to continue to deal with the COVID epidemic, transition to an executive mayor form of government, and to transform policing, all while providing services that are equitable for all Minneapolis residents. She'll give all of you and all of us who live here, the public, her best advice and judgment about all of these challenges and others. The transition to an executive mayor form of government requires operating executives like the city coordinator with deep experience in leading public agencies. Heather has extensive operations experience in local government, as you've heard about today, sound judgment, excellent listening skills, and the ability to pull together a wide range of views to make decisions that have complex dimensions. She'll focus on making progress on the city's key priorities. The focus on results may, at times, cause conflict. At other times, great celebration. She will neither shy away from conflict nor be overtaken by great success. Please confirm Heather Johnston as city coordinator. Thank you.
Next, we have Nicole Weiler, followed by Grace Waltz, followed by Malaysia Abdi.
Thank you, Council. My name is Nicole Weiler. I'm a resident of Ward 2, and I'm reading as proxy for former Minneapolis staff Steph Fenner. She is reading in solidarity with staff from the City Coordinator's Office who demand that the Council not appoint Heather Johnston and instead initiate a transparent search process and immediately partner with city staff to start meeting their demands. She started at the City Council's Communication Department, almost 100% white, in a temporary position, supporting communications related to community safety. The internal city stakeholders that she worked with were almost entirely Black or people of color. She left after only 7 months, sick of perpetuating systemic racism and hurting people with what she was being asked to do. She was asked to take racist actions as part of her job, and she took those racist actions and was frustrated that the folks she'd been hired to work with didn't want to work with her. When she began to understand the layers of harm that occurred prior to her hiring and how she'd contributed to it, she did 2 simple things that made her relationship with these folks different than departmental colleagues. The first time city folks that she worked with felt comfortable coming directly to her and confronting her about something racist she'd done, she apologized, full stop. She had participated in a meeting convened on the topic these folks were subject matter experts in that excluded them and anyone of color. They gave her direct feedback on why that was wrong and how they expected her to show up in the future. She thanked them. She started directly involving them in her work, the work that impacted them. Power dynamics are all about control. The city system and enterprise need to control what people are saying and doing and who's saying and doing that. These folks had been excluded so much that they didn't trust that their work would be communicated in the way that they wanted. So she started soliciting their feedback and their relationship changed. They started to be in this together. It became clear she could not change the way leadership thought about this work and that they would never see how differently the entire city enterprise treats the people who do it. I'll wrap up. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Grace Waltz, Malaysia Abdi, and Sheila Nazad.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Chair Palmisano and members. My name is Grace Waltz. I am the Vice President of Public Policy at the Minneapolis Regional Chamber. I'm also a lifelong resident and current resident of Ward 8 in Minneapolis. I'm here today to speak in support of the nomination of Heather Johnston. I personally had the pleasure of seeing Heather's work in action in her time as interim coordinator. She's keenly aware of the deep challenges facing our city and is committed to tackling those challenges head on. The office of the city coordinator is crucial to a highly functioning city, even more so as we think about the complex work of restructuring our government, work Heather has ably been leading. If we want our city to emerge stronger, we need to be attracting and retaining the best possible people we can find. Heather has established herself as an exceptional leader and is exceedingly qualified for the role. We need public servants like her who are willing to step up and serve our city. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Malaysia Abdi, followed by Sheila Nazad, followed by Lex Horan. Welcome.
City leaders and residents. My name is Malaysia Abdi and I'm Ward 6 resident. In January 2022, I decided to join the Civil Rights Department after being a council aide because I wanted to help transform our city and enterprise. Out of the 21 city departments, the Civil Rights Department is always supposed to do the right thing. And before I read my statement, I want to start off by saying I'm nervous to stand in front of you all today. As a temporary employee, I fear that I'll be retaliated against, but I know this is the right thing to do. I was disturbed to hear about what the city coordinator staff has been experiencing, but unfortunately, I'm not surprised. I have seen Black staff being overworked and underpaid, and I'm starting to believe this enterprise doesn't want Black or brown staff. I stand in solidarity with our CCO staff, city coordinator staff, and call on our mayor to do the right thing. Transparency is something our city staff and residents deserve. The 39 demands, including a competitive hiring process for the permanent coordinator position, is the bare minimum. This is not a personal attack, but mere fact. Choosing to not do anything subconsciously for 9 months perpetuated harm against Black and brown staff. City council members, I ask you to do the right thing and use your vote to stand with Black and brown staff. This enterprise pledged a commitment to equity, safety, welcoming, and transparency, and we can start by addressing the structural barriers to being anti-racist and working with our city coordinator staff on their 39 demands that will put our city staff first. Thank you to the CCO staff for their bravery in advocating for a healthy, anti-racist, and accountable enterprise. Coming forward today, we have a lot to lose, but so much more to gain, because when we lose our fear, white supremacy will lose its power. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Sheila Nazad, Lex Horan, and then Samantha Priest-Stinson.
Hello, council members, Mr. Mayor, and everyone who came today. I stand here in support of the CCO workers to demand that the council not appoint Heather Johnston and instead conduct an open search process to find a coordinator with the skills to lead an anti-racist workplace. And I also want to say thank you to all of the staff who are putting their jobs on the line to speak up and organize. It should be a message to the mayor, to the council, to interim coordinator Johnston, that if your staff are willing to put their jobs on the line after years of working for the city, it's time to take pause, right? It's time to look around and make a better plan. So I first interacted with the city coordinator's office in 2018. It was with the help of Councilmember Johnson and others that we passed a staff directive to start the MPD 911 work group. It was members of OPI, Brian Smith, Gina OBrien, and others who helped make sure that that work group was truly led by community members. And what happened? Their recommendations went to the staff where it became the behavioral crisis response team with the help of Councilmember Payne's work as well when he was working at the city. This is the type of policymaking and programs that we need to see right now. This is how we move away from complete dependence on policing. We have more mental health professionals in our community. And it was because of those staff that it happened. They are committed, kind, brilliant, and they deserve better. When I first read their letter, I was struck by how much care and grace they offered. They offered solutions. This wasn't a cancellation tweet. It was caring, thoughtful, and nuanced. And I hope when you make your decision today that you show the same level of nuance, care, and grace. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Lex Horan, followed by Samantha Priest-Stinson, followed by Amy Livingston.
Hi, council members, Mayor Fry. Thanks for having us today. My name is Lex Horan. I live in Ward 9, and I'm reading on behalf of a city worker who can't be here today. My name is Colleen Pulaski, and I'm asking you not to confirm Heather Johnston as the city's next city coordinator today. CCO staff and the residents of Minneapolis deserve a rigorous, transparent recruitment process and a committed anti-racist steward of the city's administration. Heather didn't create the toxic culture in the CCO, but she has certainly perpetuated it. At Heather's first all-staff meeting, I listened as my Black and brown colleagues bravely shared their experiences being marginalized both within the CCO and across the enterprise. They asked Heather for her leadership to make change. Heather suggested these problems could be fixed by everyone just being more polite to each other. Last fall, Heather instructed CCO staff to develop ongoing alternative work arrangements. These AWAs were supposed to allow CCO to embrace the opportunities for flexibility that were found during the pandemic. One of these benefits was that for staff of color, working from home had allowed them some respite from a workplace that had given them cause to feel targeted and undermined. As the mayor's February return to work date approached, we experienced a baffling lack of communication from Heather about expectations for a return to the office, from how we could stay physically healthy during a global pandemic, to how AWAs would work going forward, to how staff's emotional safety would be maintained in what we had told her many times was a hostile office space. Heather emailed us at 5 p.m. the Sunday evening before their return to work date, informing us there would be colored wristbands available for staff to indicate their COVID risk tolerance. This was literally the full extent of her communications about this major transition. Heather then received over a dozen emails from my colleagues asking for clarification and leadership in protecting the fragile gains in the workplace well-being for our colleagues of color. But in the face of staff telling Heather they feel unsafe in their place of work, that they need change and they need support to work healthfully and productively in the office, Heather offered us bracelets. This is just the tip of the iceberg of the harms Heather has caused in the CCO. I've witnessed Heather publicly snap at a Black colleague in an all-staff meeting when he asked a simple question about changing his mailing address. I and my colleagues have been excluded from meetings with city leadership through Heather's refusal to provide call-in options to work sessions. I listened with fear as Heather told a fellow staff member that she could not protect him against retaliation if he spoke out against anti-Black racism in the city. What I'm asking is that you prioritize staff who work tirelessly for the city and its residents every day, that you hear me, that you hear us, and that you stand with us. Thank you.
Thank you. Colleagues and members in our chambers today, sorry about that, there are 6 remaining speakers, and if anybody still would like to sign up, you may do so with the city clerk over there, but we have 6 speakers left. So we will be calling up Samantha Priest-Stinson, followed by Amy Livingston, followed by Gina Powell. Welcome.
Good afternoon, esteemed colleagues. My name is Samantha Priest-Stinson. I live at 3338 Benjamin Street Northeast in Ward 1. And before you start my time, I'd like to reclaim it by asking you to please look at me and put down your phones and pay attention, please. Where is our moral compass? Why can't we listen and center the staff? I have spent my week with staff, listening to them, their tears, their cries, their pain, their trauma, and the violence that is being perpetuated on them. I didn't go to work today because I stood with them this morning, listening to them, standing with them. I'm a former staffer here, and I've experienced this myself. I'm a current elected official, and I still experience this myself. As the previous co-chair of RECAC, I experienced it then. At what point are we going to do something different? Mayor Fry, you stood in our community and been on one knee and cried at the casket of Black men. But yet here we are today, and I've heard all about the wonderful performance, which I'm sure is 100% true, Ms. Johnson. However, I have not heard any of those voices talk about the harm that's been done in those spaces while those amazing things were happening. This isn't about listing off a CV and a resume and talking about the bar that Black and brown people don't get to set, but are expected to meet over and over and over. And the bar continues to get raised higher and higher and higher. 3, 4, 5 degrees, debt that we can't pay off. To come in here and not be treated with basic dignity, respect, and humanity. It is clear what they are saying. These are not allegations. This is truth. And we are failing to meet the moment. We failed to meet the moment 2 years ago when Mr. George Floyd was murdered. We failed to meet the moment when Winston Smith was murdered. We have failed to meet the moment over and over and over. With the hypocrisy, with the finger pointing, with making it about everything but except for what it is. Nothing for us is going to be done without us. And that's exactly what is happening here, over and over and over. So I'm asking you to please not move forward with this appointment today. Let's have an open and transparent process that she is included in. And if she rises to the top of the crop and we hire her, fabulous. But if not, there are other options. And the staffers that support our city, I heard people talking about we need to listen to our professional staff. Are we not professional? Are we not professional? So I don't want to continue to hear all of these white voices that have come out from under God knows what rock. Where have they been when we have been getting murdered from all these other cities, when we have been getting harmed over and over and over? Where have they been? Not here, not experiencing this, not living this.
I need you to wrap up.
I will be wrapping up. Thank you. We can continue to pretend like this isn't real and that it's not happening. We can continue to pretend because we have Black and brown and indigenous people that work their way up here to sit here, myself as well, that somehow that means that it's over and we've solved the problem, but we haven't. So I'm going to continue to speak out in this way. I'm not afraid, and I shouldn't be afraid. And I'm asking for you to do your job that you were elected to do. Let's stop being cowards.
Next, we have Amy Livingston, Gina Powell, and then Jason Garcia.
Hello, Chair Palmisano, members of the committee. My name is Amy Livingston, she, her pronouns, and I am a former City of Minneapolis employee and a city resident in Ward 9. I'm here to speak in solidarity with the city staff and ask you not to approve Interim Coordinator Heather Johnston as the permanent coordinator. They have bravely spoken out to address the foundational issues that create this toxic environment. It should not have to be their role to be the ones to speak out. Their demands started out as single requests brought to a new leader, a plea for a fresh start. They were ignored, obscured, delayed, and papered over by Heather Johnston and Mayor Fry. When you cannot trust your leaders to speak for you, then you must speak for yourself. When you cannot trust your leaders to speak for you, then they don't deserve the power and authority to speak. I said that I was a former employee. I worked here for 3 years. In this time, I saw countless incidents of blatant racism and microaggressions that left me screaming into a pillow every night. This racism cannot be fixed by all of us, as press statements suggest, due to the people who perpetuate it. It is used and encouraged by leaders and middle management across city departments. When management is the problem, you need your top leader to take them to task. Ms. Johnson and Mr. Fry have not made this a priority in the city, and BIPOC employees are the ones who suffered. I once sat in a meeting with a public works manager who, upon seeing some Middle Eastern names of my colleagues, just settled on calling them Aladdin Abubu and Dayo for the rest of the meeting. The other participants nervously chuckled along. That manager still works here. Those BIPOC employees do not. I talked to a few BIPOC coworkers when the racist Christmas tree that was up in the lobby of the 4th Precinct Police Station was not known in the press yet. It was decorated with packs of Newport cigarettes and Popeye's chicken packaging. Before it broke in the news, that Black coworker talked to his white supervisor, asking if he could switch assignments with a white coworker so that he didn't have to go there and fix computers because he didn't like walking past that tree. The supervisor's reaction? He told that Black employee to close his eyes when he walked past it. That manager still works here. The BIPOC employee does not. After George Floyd was murdered, I saw a manager complain about the creation of safe spaces during an all-staff meeting, complaining that there ought to be a safe space for people who are sick of having to watch their words all the time and walk on eggshells. Several BIPOC employees were in that meeting. That manager still works here. Those BIPOC team members, they don't. I don't work here either anymore. And I am a white, cisgender, heterosexual woman who grew up in the northwest suburbs, AKA Michelle Bachmann territory. I have plenty of blinders, and I am doing the lifelong work that is required to remove those. But if I, with all of my blinders, can see this kind of harm that is occurring, imagine what our BIPOC employees go through every single day. This problem is deep-rooted, and it is not something that cannot be fixed
I do need you to
without
wrap up.
sponsorship, support, and enthusiastic drive from the highest levels. City and employees
Ma'am,
are
you
literally
welcome-
pleading for
Ma'am,
that support.
You are welcome to put all of your remarks into the public record, but I need you to wrap up.
Okay. A transparent search for a city administrator is necessary to root out these deep-seated problems.
Thank you. Next in queue is Gina Powell, followed by Jason Garcia, followed by Chelsea McFerrin. Colleagues, after all speakers are done, we're going to take a 5-minute break that I've been asked for and connected with my vice chair about. Welcome.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good afternoon, Madam Chair. Good afternoon, everyone in this room. I am Gina Powell, former employee of City of Minneapolis. I left the city in January of 2022. Nice to see you all. I'm very nervous to be here, but I heard everything presented by my former BIPOC colleague, and I understand them and support them. And I agree that there should be transparency everywhere, especially in employment, where the decisions will be made that impacts not only the city, but city employees. As a former city employee, I would say that, yes, city has deep-rooted discrimination and racism I have seen. And I know that has been, I worked for the city for 6 years, and I supported employee resource groups where I listened to everybody coming and showing their frustration, especially the BIPOC. But one thing that I've learned is city never prioritized their employee. Regardless BIPOC or not, of course the impact on BIPOC is tremendous because of where we come from, but city never prioritized city employee. We were asked to take salary freezes, we were asked to sacrifice and even give more, overworked, underpaid, and one of the biggest economic recession, inflation time. We have felt that in our household. So that's why I'm here to say that there is a deep-rooted problem for the city employee that is beyond Heather Johnston. My personal experience with Heather Johnston has been phenomenal. I love her. She had always supported me as a woman of color working for the city. That is my personal experience. I cannot speak for other people's personal experience. I listened to them, and I am sorry that you had that experience with Heather. But as far as I know, she's one of the role models that I've looked up to be one day. So I don't know if you would decide to appoint her or not. Wherever she will go, she will bring her force with her, she will bring her positivity with her, and she'll bring her compassion with her. It would be nice to have her in the city. She would be an asset to the city. If not, she will go beyond the city and conquer the world. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Jason Garcia, followed by Chelsea McFerrin, followed by Brian Smith.
Thank you, Chair Palmisano, council members, mayor, and city staff. My name is Jason Garcia. I am a citizen of Minneapolis and live in Ward 10. I am here to read on behalf of a city worker who is not here today. My name is Nick Campbell. I worked for the city of Minneapolis in a variety of roles within the city coordinator's office between 2016 and 2021. I was most recently a program manager for the Division of Race and Equity. I am making this statement today to support my former colleagues and their demands for a more equitable and just workplace. From my first few years at the city, it became clear that this was an organization that wore people down and burned them out, especially if you were a body of culture. In my 5 years as a city employee, I had the privilege of working with some of the most talented individuals who are truly committed to making Minneapolis a more equitable and just place for its residents. Unfortunately, many of those people no longer work for the city. Those that have left didn't leave because they didn't care, or they weren't strong enough, or they were somehow defective. They left because this place became too much to bear. They made a choice to prioritize their own mental health and physical health and well-being. And the fact that time and time again, Employees in the city of Minneapolis have to make that choice is wrong, and it is a stain on this organization and a loss for the residents of our entire city. Today, you have an opportunity to pause, listen, and support a group of current employees that you should absolutely do everything in your power to support and retain. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Chelsea McFerrin and then Brian Smith.
Hello, my name is Chelsea McFerrin, and I am here in support of my brilliant former and current colleagues in the City Coordinator's Office. I currently work in regulatory services and previously in communications, HR, and IT within the City Coordinator's Office. I would like to start off by acknowledging the violent racist white supremacist attack in Buffalo, one of the single deadliest hate crimes against Black people that has occurred in the last 100 years. I bring it up today because the city enterprise has still failed to issue any sort of statement on it. In a city with some of the highest racial disparities in the nation, in the city where George Floyd was murdered by an employee of the city 2 years ago tomorrow, we are silent. During my time in the communications department, I would often coordinate with both the mayor's office as well as the city coordinator on internal communications to respond to tragedies just like Buffalo. I can remember specifically the intentionality that went into the communication on the response about a hate crime against the Asian community last year. That's why our silence on the tragedy in Buffalo speaks volumes to me and says a lot about where we are currently and why we're all gathered here today. Whether that decision was intentional or an oversight, either way it further validates the testimony that the courageous staff of the coordinator's office has shared with us, which is that we are failing monumentally to acknowledge, understand, and ultimately care about the lives and experiences of Black people at the city. Dynamic, passionate, talented folks that lend their leadership and expertise to racial equity work, public safety, and alternatives to police. By failing to acknowledge their pain, we whitewash their experience due to our own defensiveness and discomfort, and we perpetuate racist harm within these walls. This harm falls on the shoulders of all of us. This transcends administrations and coordinators. This is about persistent and prevalent racism across our enterprise. And because the nature of our work at the city requires us to constantly pivot between issues, whether it's another crisis or another ribbon cutting, I please ask that as this happens, that you don't let the voices of these courageous individuals fall into the void. I ask that you please retain this issue at the front of your mind and your heart, and that it is given the urgency that it deserves. I ask that you protect these staff from retaliation for sharing their experiences. And I ask all of you, all city leaders, whoever they end up being, to please listen to Black staff, believe Black staff, and work to ensure that Black staff at this city can work in spaces that are safe and supportive. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Brian Smith, followed by Maria Lee.
Good afternoon, Chair Palmisano, council members, Mayor Fry. My name is Brian Smith, and I am the Director of the Office of Performance and Innovation, and also the Interim Director of Strategic Management. For context, the Office of the Director of Strategic Management and the Director of Strategic Initiatives have both left because of the same reasons. I, as the Director of the Office of Performance and Innovation, have filled one of those roles along with my own job and half of the other role, making me, in essence, the highest ranking Black person in the coordinator's office. My relationship with Heather is tricky at best. Everything that everybody got up here and said today in support of the city coordinator staff is absolutely correct, and I would do nothing more than repeat it with more anecdotes, which happen daily. The other things that some of the people said about Heather here today, about being a great CFO, being great when it comes to working with other departments and things like that, I'm sure that's true too. But nobody's ever said anything about what we're here for today, which is what leadership has Heather demonstrated when it comes to moving an organization towards being a more equitable and fair working place. And I can say, I can look into the mic and I can look at my boss and say that this is personal. And I'll tell you why it's personal. It's personal because all of the work that I've done, OPI staff have done, sustainability has done, has all been about this city and its residents. And people are benefiting big time from the work that we do. The only thing that this city in this moment and this time can point to that they can be proud of and that residents say they trust is the work we've done.
Mr.
Yet
Smith,
we are-
I'm happy to accept your remarks, but I need you to wrap up.
I'm gonna take as much time as Mayor Rybak did. So, and I'm not trying to be disrespectful and I don't need applause. That's not what I'm doing it for. But I want people to know that if you can use us in that way, knowing this is a sometimes horrible place to work, but you can brag on our work, but still want us to remain unseen, unheard, disrespected, and put in the background like some slave, it can't continue. And so I'm proud of my staff, I'm proud of sustainability, and I'm proud of others for taking the risk that they've taken. I know this may be the very last day that I speak to any of you. It just might be that way. But as long as they print money, I can make it, and these people are brilliant enough to make it too. But you need to face your legacy. This is your legacy now. And so I'm just coming up here. I'm not trying to tell people how to vote, yay or nay on Heather, but I do want you to consider what it is you say out of your mouths, what it is you write in documents, and whether or not you have the right person to make that become a reality, because they've not demonstrated that in previous jobs or this one. Thank you.
Next speaker is Maria Lee.
Hello all, my name is Maria Lee. I live in Ward 10 and I'm a former employee of the city of Minneapolis. I was not planning on speaking today because I've known great peace since leaving the city in January. I worked for the city for about 4 years, and in the final months of my time here, I was detailed into the Division of Race and Equity when it was just me and Track. I'm here because my colleagues are so freaking brave. They are so brave for risking their jobs to speak out about what they are experiencing in the city. What they are doing is so hard. It is so hard to organize employees in the city of Minneapolis, and I just have all the props for them. I'm speaking in support of my colleagues. They are not naive in their asks, and I think there's been a lot of folks pointing to what they're saying that they're not being very serious about the things that we need in the city, and they're being so serious and not naive at all. Please do not punish these employees for speaking out about their experiences, and please listen to them and their demands. Thank you.
Is there anyone else who would like to speak to this item, to this appointment? Is there anyone else that would like to speak? Not seeing any, I will now close the public hearing. Thank you all for your testimony and taking time before us today. Before I invite Ms. Johnston to speak, we're going to take a 5-minute recess. So according to the clock here in council chambers, let's resume at 3:15 p.m. Thank you. To those of you in the room, I'm going to just wait a couple more minutes for my colleagues to reconvene here. Thank you. Welcome back. I'll now invite Ms. Johnston to address the committee. Welcome.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the council. I stand before you today humbled and honored to be before you for the nomination of the position of city coordinator. I want to thank Mayor Fry for nominating me and all of the time that the people took to be here to write letters of support or to be here to speak in person. I especially want to thank my colleagues and all of the city employees who have connected with me in the past few weeks to express their support. It absolutely means the world to me. When I was a young student at Augsburg College many years ago, one of the most impactful experiences for me was when I interned for Minneapolis Mayor Don Frazier. I still remember the excitement of climbing the steps to City Hall on the first floor where his office was, and I remember the passion of the public servants who worked in his office. It was there that I developed a love for the city and a commitment to serve. Through my career, I have tackled tough issues without hesitation and strived to promote efficient, equitable, and effective services. When I last served the city, I worked to merge the closed pension plans into the state plan, increasing the efficiency of administration and the long-term stability for the city's financial situation. In addition, I worked to merge the local library system with Hennepin County to help provide more equitable and financially sustainable services for our residents. As a result of this work, 3 libraries that would have been closed remain open today. In other positions at the federal, state, and local level, my efforts focused on making long-term system change. With state education funding, I focused on bringing people together to develop changes to programs impacting the most disadvantaged children to help improve student achievement. While in Burnsville, I worked with state and local officials to move forward on closing the freeway landfill to ensure long-term environmental safety for the city and county residents. The city is facing many challenging issues. We do live in a racist society. Racism does permeate all of our systems. I agree with all of the speakers who made that point. The council president has challenged all of our leaders to think about how to ensure psychological safety for our employees. We have been discussing these issues at the small labor management committee meetings, and will continue to work on this in the months ahead to ensure that we have action steps associated with those conversations. I do want to continue working to change systems and develop a culture that is inclusive, innovative, anti-racist, and equitable for all of our employees. I want our employees to be excited to come to work and collaborate on all of the difficult issues facing us. Culture change takes time and cannot be done by one person, and I believe that the best way to tackle the tough issues facing the city is to work together, learn from our mistakes, build trust, and create a better Minneapolis. Even with the hard work ahead, I still believe in an equitable future for the city that we all love. Thank you. With that, I stand for questions.
Thank you. Do my colleagues have any comments or questions for Ms. Johnston? I'll give them a moment to get into queue. Councilmember Koski.
Thank you, Madam Vice President. I appreciate it. Thank you, Interim Johnston, for being here today, and thank you for all of those that were able to be here to speak as well. I have several questions, so bear with me. Some of which, we learned a lot today, and so a lot of these questions stem from some of those questions and comments by you and those that have spoke today. So in 2020 through mid-2021, a large number of city staff in the Division of Race and Equity resigned. You were not the interim city coordinator at that time, and you took the position of interim city coordinator in mid to late 2021. But if possible, can you describe what the office culture was like when you took that position or this position, and what were the problems that you identified at the time, and how have you taken steps to address those problems?
Madam Chair, Councilmember Koski, thank you for the question. You did hear, I was aware that there were concerns about a toxic and racist culture. And I did listen to that when we were having our first staff meeting that was referenced. One of my concerns as an interim person was that what I was hearing from my staff in the office was feelings of betrayal and abandonment. And I did express to them that I was concerned about moving forward with the process and then turning around and leaving. They urged me to continue to move forward, and we did talk about having a consultant to come in and have those difficult conversations so that we could envision a future state and improve the culture. About the same time as that was discussed, the Director of Strategic Initiatives departed the city, and she was the lead on the creation of the hiring of the new and rebuilding of the new Race and Equity Department. So at that time, I turned my attention to making sure that we could hire a director and make sure that that new person was in place and got that division filled as soon as possible. So.
Thank you. So you hired or worked on that?
So I worked on hiring, thank you for the clarification. And so I worked on moving forward with getting the Race and Equity Division up and running again so that we could continue to work on the systemic issues. In addition, I did work with the HR department to try and make sure that we're looking at the statistics related to our BIPOC employees in a disaggregated way to make sure that we are actually understanding what the issues are with respect to diversity in the city. So.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Can you speak to the work you undertook as part of responding to COVID-19, and what were some of those actions that you took, and what were some of those goals?
So with respect to COVID-19, I can't take the credit for all of the response. That was a cross-departmental team that met on a very regular basis. They met much more frequently before I got here and continued to meet once I arrived. What we did do is we evaluated the data with respect to the COVID-19 pandemic. A lot of the data, as all of you are aware, because you've heard comments and information from CPED, What that taught us is that the industries in the city of Minneapolis most impacted by the pandemic were the service industries, the hospitality industries, and the restaurant industries. Those businesses are disproportionately employ people of color, and so that was a disproportionate impact. In fact, 69% of the recipients of forgivable loans program were businesses that were Black-owned or BIPOC businesses. And so when we were moving forward in terms of determining the return to work, we have been asked by different businesses throughout the city to lead by example. They wanted us to start coming back. We took a deliberative approach. We have the HR department leads the next normal process where they have department reps from all different departments. In my particular department, I have requested that the staff be in the office 2 days a week, 3 days a week at home, and to come in, I think, on a quarterly basis for in-person meetings. The in-person staff meeting that was referenced was actually done remotely because of the COVID-19 numbers, and what we wanted to do is make sure that we were leading with the data.
Thank you. So in the timeline of events, the document that was sent to council members by current and former city employees, it states that in October 2021, you verbally agreed to hire an outside consultant to address office culture. Where has this been left off, and is this something that you're still pursuing?
Chair Palmisano, Councilmember Koski, thank you. Yes, it is something we're still pursuing, but it was left off in terms of when my Director of Strategic Initiatives left the city. The responsibility for recreating the Department of Race and Equity fell on my shoulders, and I felt that that was a priority to ensure that we move forward on that to tackle the more systemic issues. I have reignited. There was some criticism. I will be transparent about that with respect to the approach of hiring a consultant and whether or not that was the right approach. I think in order to have a facilitated conversation on tough issues, I do believe that I need to be an active participant, and I've been requested to be an active participant, and I want to be an active participant in addressing these issues. In order to do that, we do need an objective third party to help have those conversations. Not to revisit the past, because I believe the Black employees in their experiences, but in order to move forward and help determine what a future state is, I believe that we needed an objective third party. To your question about what is happening now, we have narrowed it down to 3 consultants and are hoping to move forward on that soon.
Thank you. So another question, I have 2 more. So the racist culture in the city of Minneapolis long predates your term as interim city coordinator. That being said, are you supportive of building an anti-racist culture as we move forward? And what steps have you taken or plan to take to support that goal?
Chair Palmisano, Councilmember Koski, yes, I'm absolutely supportive of building an anti-racist culture. I plan to support not just the initiatives of metamorphosis to make sure that our managers are trained, and so that we are all promoting an anti-racist culture. I want to learn from my colleagues, who I've had many discussions about this in other departments, who have been able to transform the culture in their departments. And also I want to work with the new Division of Race and Equity to have anti-racist training as well that's available to all people.
Thank you. And last one, how does this nomination fit with the new government structure and its timing?
Chair Palmisano, Councilmember Koski, this nomination is for the city coordinator position. My understanding is that when a new position is created, that those nominations will be handled at that point in time, and perhaps others could chime in, but that's my understanding.
Thank you for your time. Appreciate it.
Councilmember Rainville.
Thank you, Chair Palmisano. Coordinator Johnston, could you speak a little bit more about your approach to innovation in the public sector and perhaps give us some examples of that?
Yes, Chair Palmisano, Councilmember Rainville. There are a couple different examples that I'll give you. Let me first just say is that you don't get innovation by just sitting in your office by yourself. All of the innovations that have been driven, just such as what Mr. Smith talked about with OPI, are driven by bringing people together. When I was at the state under Governor Ventura, he gave us kind of free license to try and come up with new programs. And so what we did is we looked into the data and we looked at and developed measurements. One of my favorite things to talk about is a program called Fast Break to Learning. And what that program was it was a school breakfast. The data is very clear with school breakfast that kids who are able to have regular meals achieve at much higher levels than kids who aren't. But there's a stigma. There's a stigma of being a free and reduced lunch kid. And so what happens is they don't want to go in by themselves. So what Fast Break to Learning did is it got rid of the stigma by really encouraging all kids to have a school breakfast program. So you just go in with your friends and everybody would have breakfast. And the results were pretty striking in terms of the folks who, the achievement of those students. And so that's one example. Another example, I could stand up here and I just get so excited talking about these kinds of programs. Another example of that at the state was looking at some of the school funding programs to really, again, we had programs that were in place that just didn't make any sense. What they ended up doing is they punished poor districts and made sort of loans that they would never be able to repay. So we let's kind of look at the actual data, figure out what we can do to make sure that they get the funding that they need without calling it a loan, without forcing them to pay additional debt service. But really what that did is that meant that every student, even in the poorest districts, had high quality school facilities from which to learn. And it may sound really wonky and it may sound very, maybe innovative. What it is it's really about removing those barriers to make sure that the most disadvantaged students are able to learn.
Thank you.
Councilmember Osman?
Thank you, Madam Vice President. I just want to really thank the folks that came here today to speak out. They show courage, and they kind of highlight there is a rooted problem, toxic environment in the city of Minneapolis. That's very unacceptable. Doesn't matter what leadership we have or what administration we have. As a leaders, it's for our job to clean up and to really listen to the employees. They show some courage, and that is something to really be praised. And there has been dozens of, especially Black folks former workers and that have worked, that are still working in the community, in the city of Minneapolis that came through. Maybe this is their only one opportunity to talk to the public. And really I encourage them for their bravery and thank them for coming out. I do have one question and just follow-up comments about my experience with director. The question Councilmember Koski asked was the outside consultants or the individual that are coming, the outside help we're getting. What is the timeline exactly? What is the timeline on getting those going? And what other way can we address this highlighted issue or deep-rooted problems other than just hiring consultants? What other ways in our city enterprise can we address this kind of issue?
Chair Palmisano, Councilmember Osman, the timeline is next week we're going to try and interview the consultants in the next week or two and then move forward with a plan. I did meet with my management team about a strategy. They gave me some feedback, and so we're going to take the revised plan forward with the consultants and discuss that with them. So the intent is to move forward on that expeditiously. The other piece that I would say is to make sure that we're listening to employees. One of the initiatives that I've tried to restart is a better coordination among 38th and Chicago, brought in all of the employees who work on various different employees. I've heard several times we want to listen to our employees. I absolutely want to listen to our employees, and I think our work restarting at 30th and Chicago is a piece of that. And those are just one of the efforts. I also think that we need to really make sure that our new department, or our new division of race and equity is successful. I think we need to listen to those very talented individuals who we're able to bring to the city.
Thank you. And just the one comment that I want to make, in my experience with you, you know, you have been capable of really making time for me as a new council member, honest and just easy accessible for me throughout the 8 months or 9 months you have been here. In addition to the consultant report into the coordinator's office, I'm also watching the change in the city structure. So that you could, this kind of position, leadership will play a huge, how that will go on the government structure. One of the things that is apparent in that the city coordinator's office has often been where the council toasted things they didn't know where to put in the enterprise. And I did that last week until the director of finance really directed me to tell me where to take that. And I know it's a department that we all look forward through and work with them, and it's a huge department. And really, it's hard to build an organization that is working towards purpose when so many different purposes exist in one department. So I thank you for your time, and thank you, Council Vice President, for your.
Councilmember Wansley-Warlaba.
Thank you, Chair Palmisano. I have a comment before my question. My comment is directly to the staff. Thank you for speaking your truth unapologetically in a place that has been widely documented to be racist, to be violent, to be silencing. And we've known this about this place, and I'm talking about the enterprise, for a number of years. And that's been affirmed not only by your experience, but the external dynamics that we've seen that caused, just 2 years ago, our city to burn in the wake of George Floyd. We celebrate that tomorrow, 2 years. And I actually want to name George Floyd and the uprising that took place did not happen in isolation. So I'm really glad that I saw elected leaders who were here, and some who are still here, who have been in these positions of power prior to George Floyd. I encourage you to really do some deep reflection about how you have moments like this to decide whether you were going to be on the right side of history and whether you decided to not be, and how that led to one of our employees lynching publicly a Black man, and subsequently many more since then. It is really embarrassing that we are in this predicament where we're literally being asked as a body to consider you, Johnston, for appointment when there is a human rights investigation happening, when employees have already named that there's going to be human rights investigations taking place. This alone should cause us to take pause and say, maybe we should not move forward. This should call the mayor to take pause, especially having appointed interim Chief Amelia Huffman, who also was named in the racial discrimination lawsuit of an outgoing Black police chief. It should cause us pause to say maybe we should not move forward with this at the bare minimum. So I do not even understand why we're even having this conversation where you, Johnston, you, our staff, are even having to even consider moving forward right now with any type of appointment. This should not be happening less than 24 hours away from one of the most historic events that apparently many of us decided to run on, or at least said that we cared about racial equity. And if you cared about racial equity, if you cared about Black lives, you would not put us in this predicament, Mayor Fry, specifically. So it's really unfortunate that we're in this place and we shouldn't have to be. And I really would encourage my employees to consider, or even Mayor Fry, to delay consideration for this appointment until those two things at bare minimum are resolved, the human rights investigation that's taking place, as well as the human rights process. And then my initial question around COVID, I would like to know what mechanisms are you putting in place for our staff to feel ready and psychologically ready to come back into a work environment, knowing that there is no trust right now between our staff, and particularly your leadership. I've heard a lot about bringing in external facilitators. Apparently that's been a practice we've done before. How is this any different? How is that going to create different outcomes for our staff to not only re-earn the trust of your leadership, but the trust of this enterprise?
Madam Chair, Council Member Wansley-Warlaba, let me first say I do take the concerns very seriously that were raised. And I was the one who, the day that I received that letter, referred it to HR to investigate, because I believe that we should take these concerns seriously. So I just want to be very clear on that. I think in terms of we have to build trust. I mean, that's going to take time. I understand it. I hear it from my folks, and I hear it from the experiences that they've had over and over again. I would like it to be a different experience. And I would like to bring somebody in to have those tough conversations. But more than have those tough conversations, I would like to develop an action plan so that we can build that work culture. One of the main things when we were talking about some of the plans that are underway at HR related to their DEI initiative is to develop action plans and timelines, because I think that's where the city tends to fall short. We do admire problems an awful lot. And until we get to the point, and that's what we're trying to do with our Labor Management Committee, is, our first step in that process in terms of safety was talking about bringing the resolution to folks to raise the issue. And now we're going to continue to work with our labor partners to develop action steps so that we can make sure that our employees feel safe coming to work. And for the 60% of employees who have been at work and have never left the workplace, that they continue to feel safe out in the community as well.
Councilmember Johnston.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Interim Director or Interim City Coordinator Johnston, I have a couple of questions for you. What is, in your estimation, the role of yourself or any department leader in terms of culture change? How much of that, because we've heard about these concerns around a toxic culture, how much of that is the role of a department leader? How much of that is on the council? I'm interested in what your philosophy and take is on that.
Councilmember Palmisano, Councilmember Johnson, I think it's both. I think it's everybody's responsibility. I think it comes down to how we conduct ourselves. I think it comes down to making sure that we're working together and that we as department leaders are looking at the issues within our own departments, but also looking at the city culture as a whole. You've heard many of our leaders talk about the city's brand, and our brand is broken, and we're not going to be able to get or keep good employees if we don't improve the culture here. That's just, you heard from several folks. That's just the truth. And we do need to work on these issues because we need, the strength of Minneapolis is its diversity and is the fact that we have Black and brown employees who are incredibly talented. And we need to make sure that we're doing the hard work to make sure that they feel heard and listened to and really taking all of those pieces so that they feel, and which is kind of the crux of psychological safety, is making sure that people feel valued.
Thank you. And I agree with my colleague on thanking our city employees who showed up to speak as well. I think it's really important as an elected official to be able to hear from our workforce when there are concerns. Otherwise, oftentimes that may not come to our attention, and it's something that we do have a responsibility to do our due diligence in asking questions on this. I know one of the things that was raised by a number of city employees was a concern around retaliation. Are you committed that there won't be any retaliation for these employees? And then more broadly speaking, there's obviously harm here. And if you are confirmed, how would you work to retain those employees who have spoken up today or who may have similar feelings but have not spoken up?
Chair Palmisano, Councilmember Johnston, let me be clear again. I have no, and I said this to my staff in that meeting as well, I have no intention of retaliating against anyone. I appreciate the fact that we're hearing these concerns, that we heard these concerns from the time I started. It's a challenging issue, and I do want to work on it and make it better. I think, as I said, we're starting a process, and it will be a long process. But the way that we move forward on these issues is to bring people together and have conversation, and then develop a plan to make it better.
And as you're thinking about, so I appreciate that commitment around no retaliation for employees, around specifically retention as well. I think that's, for those of us that are considering your appointment, and I'll say it out loud, right? It feels like, in a way, it is you or some of our employees in this, because we have heard about employees who have left. And so what is your response to that, and how do you plan to keep or not keep these employees in that regard?
Chair Palmisano, Councilmember Johnston, the culture discussion, what I'm hearing is, if the culture doesn't improve, we will continue to lose Black and brown employees. That's what I have heard repeatedly today. And so we need to start that work to improve the culture. And that's my commitment. And I continue to work well with other employees throughout the organization, BIPOC employees as well. And I feel that the only way that we move forward as an enterprise is to listen to all of our employees and move forward.
Thank you. And then this is maybe just more of a question. This is for myself and for the public as well. We've heard about these different investigations, and I'll just opine, I think it was right of you to reach out to HR and to say, here's concerns, can you investigate? This is probably more directed towards our city attorney. The council is considering an appointment here. It's a 4-year appointment. There's recently a charter change. Whatever comes back out of an investigation, does the council have any say moving forward? If Heather Johnston is appointed as the city coordinator, is that the end of the matter for the council, regardless of what comes back from any sort of process on this, and it would be in someone else's hands, such as the mayor's hands, because of this charter change? And this is predicated on if there were findings that were of concern, I will say.
Yep. Chair Palmisano, Councilmember Johnston. I'd just like to note, too, that I have in attendance today is Sarah Riskin, who is one of our HR LR attorneys, and so I might defer to her. If you look at the government structure charter amendment, and there are many moving pieces on that need to happen and will happen over the next months, years, in terms of both charter amendments and ordinance amendments, a significant amount of ordinance amendments to implement that charter amendment. As is the nature of the voters' will and the intent expressed in approval of that amendment, it does create a structure whereby the executive, who is the mayor, can remove an appointed, a mayoral appointed position, essentially at will.
So if it sounds like the council would not have a say moving forward if there were potentially findings from an investigation. Is that right? And it would be in the mayor's court on this? Because that was my understanding too with the charter change, and it sounds like you just confirmed that, but I want to say this out loud because I think the piece of this, and this has nothing to do with interim city coordinator Heather Johnston in terms of what I'm thinking on this, but just procedurally, it does feel a little bit like cart before the horse on consideration when there's an active process underway, but.
Chair Palmisano, Councilmember Johnston, could you repeat your question, please?
So essentially, if we make a decision and appoint Heather Johnston as city coordinator, and then there's this process of this investigation, and there's findings that come back from it, and if in the chance those findings say, that there was some failure of leadership, right?
Mm-hmm.
That would be pertinent, by the way, to how council members would feel about a department leader. Would the council have any options available at that point, or would we essentially have no other options but to let the mayor consider acting, and then otherwise, if that individual comes up 4 years later for reappointment, that's our next opportunity?
Chair Palmisano, Councilmember Johnson. You're correct. Under the charter, under the new charter, the mayor has the ability to remove at will, for cause or without cause. So regardless of the findings from the investigation, the mayor has the power on removal. Where the council theoretically gets involved in any sort of in any charter appointment, charter department head appointment, really would be theoretical. But for example, council's role in resolving settlement agreements, council has the power on voting for with settlement agreements. So depending on what could happen, I mean, we're in a theoretical world, right? But first there's an investigation. Data Practices Act also comes into play in terms of what becomes known, what's not known. But it's really in litigation settlements, the council is involved. But otherwise, it's the mayor's purview to remove with or without cause at any time.
Thank you. And then I have one last question and then a comment. So this is for interim city coordinator Heather Johnston. We've certainly talked about these concerns very heavily both in our questions and in testimony and all of that. Shifting away from those for a moment, can you speak more around your vision for the department and some of the work you would like to see done over the next several years in the city?
Chair Palmisano, Councilmember Johnson. If I can, I will refer to Councilmember Osmond's question about government structure. One of the things that I believe will make us more successful is if that we can have synergies related to some of the work that's underway in the coordinator's office currently. For example, we have a sustainability division in our coordinator's office and we have a sustainability division in the health department. Sometimes they're competing for the same resources. If we were able to combine those two divisions and have them work more synergistically together as part of these government structure reforms, I believe that will help us move forward more quickly and in concert with each other on some of these environmental issues in that case. We also have a couple folks who have sort of our one-person shops. And so bringing those folks into other departments so that there's more cohesiveness and more forward vision in those areas would be, I think, very helpful. I think ensuring that what functions remain with the coordinator are really remaining with the coordinator for a good reason, or I guess in that case it would be with the Office of Public Service, and making sure that we have those correct alignments in place so that we can move forward. The other piece of that I feel is incredibly important with the coordinator's office or the chief administrator's office in the future is that they need to be bringing people together. One of the things that I heard when I first started here at the city is that we had a lot of people in the public safety area who didn't know what other initiatives were going on, were underway. And so we have a monthly meeting just to talk about what's going on. It may seem silly, but it's a way of trying to cross-communicate about what the initiatives are that are underway so that we can cross-pollinate as well. And so that's one of the pieces. I mentioned earlier the work at 30th in Chicago. Let's bring everybody together who's working on things so that we can figure out where we're at, come back to the policymakers to make sure that we have the direction clear, and then figure out what steps we need to do to move forward in those processes.
Thank you. And then my quick comment to make here, and this is for everyone in the public as well, is so I'm actually now less than 2 days back on the job after a prolonged family leave. Our son newborn was in the NICU for 6 weeks. It was a really difficult time, but I'm glad that he's doing well and that he's back. But I am getting caught up to speed on this and the concerns as well, which I take seriously and am doing my due diligence on as well. And so I am, if this is voted on today, I will be abstaining so I can continue that and have deeper conversations as well over the next day before a full council meeting. Or alternatively, I would also support sending on to full council without recommendation, which doesn't mean not recommended. It just means that this committee is not producing a recommendation and moving this issue on to full council to consideration. So I want to put that out there for the public record around my specific process in considering appointments. So thank you, Ms. Johnston, for your time today and for stepping up to be considered for this role as well.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember. I do plan to make that exact motion at the end of anybody's comments, or you're welcome, or somebody else is welcome to make that motion, or another one as well. Councilmember Vita.
Thank you, Vice President Palmisano. Just a couple questions and a comment. Could you please just talk about your approach to your staff appointments and how you support your leadership team?
Councilmember Palmisano, Councilmember Vita. We have, the most staff appointments that I've had recently have been in the Office of Race and Equity Division. We actually move very expeditiously to move forward on a nationwide search, Generally speaking, when I have someone at that level, I do like to have a combination of folks who will be working with that person as well as people who are reporting to that person. And so I did have a variety of staff teams related to that appointment to give feedback on the candidates. I believe we did end up with a candidate that was recommended by both teams. And in terms of other pieces of staff, I like to challenge my staff. I have a lot of really good staff here, and I want to make sure that they have the support that they need to move forward in their initiatives. We have a lot more vacancies right now than we do than we have staff in some respects, and so I've been working to get a lot of those positions filled. So I hope that's responsive to your question.
Thank you. My next question is, I'm a newer council member, but we've had maybe 3 or 4 recommendations from the mayor come forward, and yours has been very different than what I've experienced of what happened today. Could you just tell me why you want this job? Like I don't mean it that way. I think it's a great job, but I just mean like after what's been going on for the past few weeks, what we've seen today here from people, like what please just.
Chair Palmisano, Councilmember Vita.
Yeah.
I've been asked that question a lot in the past couple of weeks, and there are days that the answer changes, but fundamentally what it comes down to is that I love the city. I think we have an amazing management team in place at the city here, and I think we have people who are committed to moving forward. I think that people want the culture to change here, myself included. And I think people are committed to that. And when you have the opportunity and the support of a great team, and you have people who want to move forward and heal the city, we haven't fully healed. I think you've heard that. And I don't know that we ever will fully heal, to be frank, but we do have folks who are committed to moving forward, and that's exciting. And again, I love the city. I truly believe that the way that the city goes is the way that the state goes, because we have such an influence on everybody around us. And that's really what it comes down to for me. There are huge challenges, don't get me wrong. I totally understand that we have huge challenges. I happen to like a good challenge, but it really just fundamentally comes down to loving the city.
Thank you for those answers. And then just the last thing, I just want to start by saying that I take employee concerns very seriously. After I received the emails about the years of toxic racism in the work environment here at the city coordinator's office, I met with interim city coordinator Johnston to discuss. She was the first to admit that there are systemic problems not only in her department, but in the city enterprise as a whole. When I sat down with interim city coordinator Johnston, we went down the list of complaints one by one, and I learned that she took this job knowing that these problems existed and have for years. She has been working to try to improve the department. In fact, the very first time I met Ms. Johnston, way back in January, I asked her how I could best support her. She brought up these same concerns that are outlined in the employee email and asked me for help to make the coordinator's office a better work environment for her team. She has always spoken highly of her entire team. She's made a point to tell me that there will be no retaliation from anything that has happened every single conversation I've had with her. She advocates for resources for her team. She's asked me for ideas about how she could improve the environment, and I found her to be very receptive to my ideas. I feel confident in voting for you, Ms. Johnston. Her appointment to me is a good one because she's experienced, she's smart, she can take criticism. It's obvious she can take criticism. And she is willing to have the hard conversations, which is so needed in this work to move forward. I appreciate you going through this very, very vulnerable process. You know, we ran for office, and that's one level of vulnerability, but this is very different. To sit in this room, I don't even know how long we've been here now, several hours, and listen to people on your side and not on your side, but have the ability to still want this job. And I mean that with like the utmost respect. I don't want you to not want the job, but to be able to sit here and take that. And that is so boss. That is a boss move, to be able to take the criticism that you're taking and still want to do this job and do this job with the people who are here at the city of Minneapolis. I respect that wholeheartedly. I appreciate you. I look forward to working with you, and I'm voting for you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councilmember Ellison?
You know, my questions, just because it was brought up by several of the folks who came to testify, was going to be around this question of retaliation and retention. I thought that was a really good addition to the question from Councilmember Johnston, and so you've already spoke to that, and so I'll just add some comments, and you're welcome to reply. I just want to say that, thank you for sitting through this process. I think it is really important. I think I want to echo Councilmember Vital on that front, but I do also want to say that, to me, the Herculean effort that I saw in this room today is for staff who are still actively here in the city to stand up and give the kind of testimony that they've given. I've actually never seen anything like it. And it's left a tremendous impact on me. And when I look at the staff who, former and current, but especially current, who are in this room who did give testimony, I'm looking at folks who are I'm not just seeing the staff here, I'm seeing their work. I'm seeing, and I'm imagining what the city's like in the absence of their work. What's the city like without the mobile mental health unit? What's the city like without any green zones policy, what to speak of? What's the city like without any direction on our trans equity council? What's the city like without any direction on race equity? That's what I'm seeing when I look in the room and I see the staff who have testified. And so I want to just make some emphasis to this point about retention of the staff. Should you be approved, I think it's critically important that the people who are in this room who testified not be allowed to sort of just dry on the vine, so to speak, right? So maybe there's not active effort to push them out, but there's a sort of this passive effort to push them out. I think that that would be a huge mistake, because when you imagine the city without the work of the people who came into this room to testify today, I think I'm imagining a city in which my residents are less safe. I'm imagining a city in which the city is really harmed by the absence of their work. And so I hope that we can be resilient through criticism, and I hope that we can take the feedback that we've seen here today, and I hope that we can, while giving props where due to you, to give props where due to the staff who came to testify as well today. And so I just wanted to make that point, and let the staff know that your work is incredibly seen, and that the courage that it took to step up shouldn't be dismissed. I don't think that we can sit here and say that when we agree with some of the criticisms that staff have for anybody in leadership, then it's good. But if we don't, then we equate it to petulance, or we equate it to something negative. I don't think that's the standard that we should set. And so I just wanted to speak to that and thank Councilmember Johnston for those questions around both retaliation but also retention, because again, it came up. And I by no means make those comments in the spirit of you intending to be retaliatory, but it came up several times, and I felt like it would be a mistake to not mention it. And I'm glad that you were able to answer some questions along those lines. So thank you.
Mayor Fry.
Thank you, Madam Vice President. I had a couple of questions / clarifications to make, and then an overarching comment. First, to Councilmember Andrew Johnson's question, which is a legitimate and fair one. I believe the attorneys did give the right answer. That being said, there's also another practical reality about the next several months and years right now, which is that we're moving into a new government structure format. And so that certainly the investigation, which was commenced at the request of Heather Johnston, will be taken very seriously in that appointment as well. And inevitably, we do have that new government structure to step on as well. And so I want to make very clear that a big part of that will be the results of any investigation that comes forward. Now, secondly, a big topic that I think we've all been discussing is reprisal and retaliation. And Interim Director Heather Johnston, you mentioned, I think I know exactly what you meant, but I just want to clarify from a legal perspective. You said you have no intention whatsoever to retaliate.
Madam Chair.
And I wanted to make clear what you meant by that is you will not be retaliating. Yeah.
Sorry. Go ahead.
And so as opposed to having no intention whatsoever to retaliate, I want to be clear, there will be no retaliation.
Correct. Madam Chair, Mayor Fry, there will be no retaliation.
Thank you. And I want to thank everyone that had the courage to be in this room today. I want to thank every single person that testified for having the courage to speak their truth. I want to thank Interim Director Heather Johnston for absorbing and considering all of the feedback, both positive and critical. That is a big part of being a leader, and leadership right now is not easy. We have systemic inequities in our city. We have systemic inequities in our nation. We have broad-based social and civic issues that permeate literally everything that we do. But oftentimes when we transition from the broad-based civic and systemic realities that communities of color face, that immigrants face, that BIPOC and LGBTQ people face, that Jews face, I can go women, on and on and on. There's a gap when we then bring the same issues to an individual. Oftentimes we lose sight of the humanity of a particular individual that is working doggedly to make the change that we all want to see. And everyone, they speak their own truth. They speak from their own personal experiences, and those personal experiences cannot be held down. They need to be lifted up. We need to believe people's personal experiences, regardless of what they may be, regardless of how it makes us feel. It's a time to kind of lean into the discomfort there. And so I can't speak for others' personal experiences, but I can speak for my own. And let me share with you some personal experiences that I've had over these last couple of years in work both before and during Interim Director Heather Johnston's term. My experience is that over these last couple of years, we often have been faced with completely no-win situations, where you know ahead of time, going into a decision, that regardless of what you decide, the results will likely be negative and in some cases could be a mess. We have faced some hard decisions, but more often than not, the decision or the right path is pretty clear. But what's also clear is that no matter what you decide, when you go with that right decision, you're likely going to get beat up from every single angle. And so if you are willing to take the reins through these troubled times, if you are willing to step into that arena with your face marred with dust and sweat, if you are willing to take both the critique as well as the praise and have the courage to be in the rooms making those decisions, as difficult and as painful as they may be, that also is deserving of respect and an understanding of each person's humanity. It's a willingness sometimes to say the thing that is not going to get you points. And I'll tell you, being city coordinator, being a director of a department right now is not going to gain you any popularity points. If you have the courage to do the difficult and honorable thing, and more importantly, if you have the courage to step into the breach of some of the hardest issues that in many cases other levels of government aren't willing to touch, you know ahead of time that you're going to get critique. You know ahead of time that these issues are painful and rightfully so. But the person who wants to be in that arena is also the person that I want to work with. Regardless of how hard the issue has been, global pandemic, back to work, the deep and systemic inequities that we see in our city and how specifically we work through it as an enterprise, there are so many tough issues that Heather has leaned into. Homeless encampments. I want to be with the people that want to be in the arena working alongside of us. She's never shied away. She's stepped up every single time. That's what public service is about right now. That's why I'm supporting her.
Councilmember Chugtai.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and Interim Coordinator Johnston. I've got just a few questions for you. I appreciate the comments that Councilmember Johnson and Councilmember Ellison and Mayor Fry have all brought up regarding retaliation and some of your answers on that. You and I had a chance to meet late last week, and I think this was the first thing I brought up to you was a deep concern for the retaliation that people who have signed this letter, and then many of whom we saw come in and speak today, and many of whom who didn't sign the letter but came in to speak today, are going to experience in their careers, in their time here at the city of Minneapolis. And at that time, I think this was Friday morning, right? You said the same thing to me. I think your exact words were, retaliation is not my style, which I appreciated hearing and appreciated having that affirmed to me. And then a few hours later, on Friday afternoon, all members of the council received an email from the city coordinator's office staff in which there was a very concerning thing that was referenced, and I'll just read it here. And this is in a couple of examples they provided in reference to, the argument they're making that we shouldn't be moving forward with this nomination. But it reads, when these demands were first presented in a full CCO staff meeting, a white staff member pointed out that he had been in an awkward position wanting to support Black staff, but not being sure how much retaliation that would risk. Heather told him she didn't know what he meant, and a Black staff member asked her explicitly, "Can you commit to him that he wouldn't risk retaliation and risk his job for supporting Black staff?" Heather replied, "I can't commit to that." So can you please, I think I'll just ask a couple of questions then. Can you please reconcile what I've heard stated here, what you said to me in our conversation last week, and then what I'm seeing in this email?
Madam Chair, Councilmember Chugtai, thank you for allowing me to clarify that, because the question that was raised is, can you give us immunity? And in my understanding, immunity is a legal concept, and I don't know how I give someone an immunity. What I did say is that I did not intend to retaliate. I did say that in that meeting, and I don't, and I'm saying that publicly. I will not retaliate against these employees. I'm going to say that again. I will not retaliate against these employees. And I want to be very clear on that.
That's helpful. I mean, what I'm reading here is, I don't see the word immunity referenced here at all. It just says, can you commit to him that he wouldn't risk retaliation and risk his job for supporting Black staff? Then am I understanding that your recollection of what that conversation was is different from what staff remember it being?
Councilmember Chair Palmisano, Councilmember Chugtai, yes.
All right, that's helpful. Thank you.
And there was another staff person who also jumped in to clarify at that point too, but from my recollection.
Okay. Let's switch gears, actually, starting with a question to the City Attorney's Office. I appreciated your guidance on the outcomes of an HR investigation and then what type of follow-up action, who has the authority to take. If you can just speak to some legal guidance for taking on this confirmation during an open HR investigation, I think that clarification would just be helpful for all of us.
Yes, Chair Palmisano, Councilmember Chugtai. The continuing with the nomination process or the response after getting a complaint is based on what's reasonable under the law. Without getting into all of the details, the overarching issue is what's reasonable. And given the nature, obviously there's a lot of information in the letters, and I also want to respect the Data Practices Act here and make sure, I'm not going to repeat anything that is not public data as we're talking here. But given the specific allegations and having read through, we do not believe that there is greater legal risk in continuing with the nomination than in not continuing. Either way would be a reasonable response given what the specific allegations are and the state of the law as it relates to this particular nomination.
That's really helpful. Thank you very much. So, I want to go back to response to, I believe, Councilmember Osman's question from earlier, in which you stated that when you received that letter from City Coordinator's office staff, that you immediately referred it to HR and asked them to investigate I think the day or the day after you received that letter. I think what I've also heard kind of throughout the testimony today and some of the questions and answers is around the fact that these concerns, you were aware of them, or you were aware of a toxic culture that many employees felt, that some of the specific concerns and demands that were then included in this letter had been brought to your attention. I think I'm just wondering if some of these concerns were brought to you as early in a formalized way as October, why you waited until you received a formal demand letter to bring HR in to start an investigation.
Madam Chair, Councilmember Chugtai, I'm not sure I'm completely understanding your question, but I'm going to give it a shot. A lot of the specific examples in the letter occurred before I was here. And so at that point in time, my focus was on moving forward. There were concerns expressed about the return to work. And as I've mentioned, we've had many discussions about throughout the enterprise with all of the different departments about returning to work. We've had a lot of requests from departments, or excuse me, from businesses downtown to bring our employees back, to lead on that matter. And we've tried to do that safely. Even in the city coordinator meeting that we discussed, we were going to reserve room 100, provide N95 masks for everybody. And then even then, when the COVID numbers increased, we went to virtual. And so we did do that. We are a public-facing department. The coordinator's office is one of the offices that has a spotlight on it. And so we need to lead with respect to things like returning to work. We need to lead with respect to all of the issues that were raised in the letter. And my mistake, or my what I felt like was important at that point in time, when we had some pushback in terms of the approach, was to make sure that we got the systems issues started, addressing the systemic issues, because really racism is a systemic issue. It's not just one office, I think, as we've talked about before. And so I wanted to get our race and equity division up and running. I wanted to make sure that we were addressing other issues with respect to HR and helping move those along as well. Did I get at your question?
I think so.
Thank you.
So I want to talk a little bit about just building off of your answers to Councilmember Johnston from earlier. I appreciated learning just a little bit more about your vision for the city coordinator's office and your goals as the director of this department. The way I understood what you shared with us include consolidating our government structure and finalizing what the new structure of our government will look like, as well as more internal communication among city staff that are working on the same thing, but perhaps don't know about the other's work. So I think those are two goals that are helpful. You're being appointed to a 4-year term. Can you tell us? Can you dig in a little bit more, or give us a little bit more about in the 4 years that you'll be in this role, just your vision for the city coordinator's office and some of your goals as the director of this department?
Thank you, Chair Palmisano, Councilmember Chugtai. Yes, there are a whole bunch of initiatives. One of the things we've talked a lot about is the need for more project management within the coordinator's office, so that we can move enterprise-wide initiatives forward, like 38th in Chicago, like the discussions on the 3rd precinct. I think many of you, we've had conversations with respect to that. Also, a lot of the work that has been started and been underway for a number of years, I can't take credit for any of it, because the staff has done tremendous work with respect to performance measurement. We're really hoping to get that very directly linked to resources. That is something that we're starting this year, and we're hoping to really move that forward. I believe in that from the time I interned at the National Performance Review. I do believe we need to be looking at outcomes for the resources that we're investing. I think we need to continue to do that. I think all of the work that's been done with the behavioral response unit has been tremendous, and I think it's been very successful. I think that it has won over the critics. I hope that we'll continue that. That may not rest in the city coordinator's office forever, but if you move the management of some of those activities into other departments, kind of in the sort of the incubate in the coordinator's office and then move them elsewhere to make sure that they're aligned with the other departments and those resources, I think that frees them up to look at other innovations throughout the organization. So.
Appreciate that, thank you. So again, for your appointment, halfway through your first year, can you share some highlights of your time so far and some of the accomplishments that you've been able to move?
All the accomplishments, or not all of the accomplishments, but some of the accomplishments come with the challenges, right? I mean, I'm very proud of the work that we did to respond to the after-action report in terms of making sure that we have action steps in place. I'm glad that we've been able to do that. I'm very proud of the fact that we have a 5-person race and equity division again. I'm very excited about that. The fact that I believe we are working better cross-departmentally has been I'm very proud of that. That is, I think you get better outcomes when you hear more voices. And I believe that we're moving in the right direction in that regard as well. Those are a few. I can keep going if you want.
You know, I think this was something that came up during our conversation late last week, and then something I heard you talk about a little bit earlier too, but just describing your time when you first started in this role and meeting with some of the staff of color within your department and hearing from people some of their concerns around the culture in the city coordinator's office and their concerns around, or their experiences around systemic racism here at the city of Minneapolis. And I think your interpretation of that, I think it's like fear around abandonment or feeling abandoned by previous coordinators who started the work and then left, or you know, didn't see through some of the culture changes that staff were specifically referencing, and that, you know, you wanted to, at least in our conversation with one another, something you referenced was like, you know, I came into an interim role. I wasn't guaranteed to be here, and so I really didn't want to start moving a bunch of work around addressing some of these specific culture and racism concerns within the city coordinator's office, because, you know, I didn't want to be a part of perpetuating this sense of abandonment that so many of our staff in the CCO experience, and didn't want to move forward with bringing in that external consultant because you were filling an interim role. So, should you be appointed then to fill this 4-year term, are you committed to staying in that role through the 4-year term and not pursuing or accepting other positions that may open up? Since I've heard such a strong commitment to, you know, not wanting to abandon the CCO staff.
Madam Chair, Councilmember Chegtai, let me just clarify. Initially, when I was asked to come up with a plan with the consultant, so the feedback I got when I expressed those concerns was, move forward. And I heard that, and I moved forward with a plan that involved a consultant. And then I did get a lot of pushback related to the use of a consultant and folks wanting me to do that on my own. And I think I talked about that earlier with respect to a facilitator and the role of a facilitator versus active engagement in a change process. And so then I turned my attention to the more systemic pieces with the departure of the director of strategic initiatives, and to take that on myself to move forward to recreate the Department of Race and Equity, the Division of Race and Equity, excuse me. So yes, I am committed to moving forward. As I said, we've got some discussions next week about consultants. I think we've narrowed it down. I'm working with a couple of my staff on selecting those consultants, figuring out the process and moving forward. So,
yeah, I think my question wasn't about like next steps with the consultant. It was more so about a word that I've heard you use a few different times now, which is the staff within the city coordinator's office feeling a sense of abandonment as a result of a ton of leadership changes within the directors of the city coordinator's office. And so I'm asking
yes, I'm committed to staying for the full term.
For the full term as the director of the city coordinator's office.
As the city coordinator's office, and unless, I mean, we don't know if that's 4 years given the government structure, but changes, and so that may be a different position at some point in time, and then that will go through another process. So I'm
Right,
committed to staying through the term of city coordinator.
For sure. I mean, I feel like in all of the drafts of the government structure that I have seen, certainly there's a new chief administrative officer that comes in at the top of the organizational chart, but the city coordinator and the city coordinator's office remains as a department in the organizational chart. So I think that's what my question is aimed at: is are you going to stay in this role and for the full 4-year term?
Actually, Councilmember Chugtai, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I want to verify that with the clerk, because it is not my understanding that in any of the new government structure proposals that we've had in front of us, that I've seen the city coordinator position in addition to the chief administrative officer position. Do you think that that's?
Madam Vice President, I'm calling up the website where we've posted the latest version of the mayor's proposed organizational structure. It shows a coordinator's office underneath a deputy of administrative services reporting to a chief administrative officer. I think as we've been discussing this in public, we've talked in theory about the idea that the chief administrative officer, much like a city manager, provides centralized management support over the bulk of all departments as they eventually are reorganized in agreement between the mayor and the council. The position of city coordinator as it exists today is probably much more analogous to that deputy director role. The city coordinator today has direct supervision over the internal management departments of the city and not the other charter departments. And the significant change the mayor has proposed is combining all of those charter department heads as well as those internal operations under a new chief administrative officer. That chief administrative officer, therefore, is an entirely different position, although it is somewhat parallel to the position of city coordinator today. And I am assuming, although this would be subject to the mayor and council's action, not mine, that the functions performed by the city coordinator largely would be under that new deputy level position. As Ms. Johnston even said, and again, it's certainly staff can recommend, but mayor and council have to take the action. Some of the functions in the coordinator's office today may not ultimately reside in a coordinator's office in a future organizational structure. There may be efforts to streamline and clarify and bring efficiencies by consolidating, as she mentioned, like with like in other departments. So I don't think it's accurate to say that there will be a coordinator's office into the future. I think it's that there is a coordinator today, and pending whatever action the mayor and the council take on the future implementation of the government structure, there may or may not be a coordinator office.
But in the current organizational, like in the current draft of that organizational chart, not talking about the job description, but just the offices and the titles, there is like listed a like coordinator's office within the organizational chart, and that coordinator's office is a separate department or a separate department head as that deputy level role that we're discussing.
There is shown on the website, Madam Vice President, a coordinator's office. And to be clear, I need to get into LIMS to see if that's the actual file, because there were multiple org charts that have been passed back and forth, and the only official one would be what was presented to the council and would be in the LIMS file. I'm looking at a website because I wasn't prepared for that question. So
sure.
If you can give me 2 seconds, I can pull up the LIMS file and tell you. But on the website where we've posted government structure, there is a box that says coordinator's office.
Great. So I think that was my question, right? Is like you're being appointed to run a department that exists right now and potentially exists, we believe, we're fact checking, in a new organizational structure. Do you intend to stay in the job that you are being appointed to right now in the department that you're being appointed to right now for the full 4 years?
Madam Chair, Councilmember Chugtai, I don't know that I can answer that until the governance structure is done. I just don't think I can answer that. Because I don't think it's going to look the same.
Yeah. I think that what the city clerk and city coordinator Johnston are saying is that this is an evolving process, and we need to take an action now to decide whether or not to appoint Heather Johnston as the city coordinator, but that role is changing, and some of my conversations with colleagues here have been about that role evolving and changing, and it's been kind of a dynamic discussion. There aren't any decisions now. Colleagues, I do want to point out that there are a number of colleagues that have reached out to me here that say they have childcare commitment needs or other appointments or other neighborhood meetings this evening. It is my intent to end this conversation by 5 p.m. We do have a couple other
Madam Vice President.
people in queue. Yeah.
Just to clarify, the last presentation made by the mayor at the April 26th meeting, which is in LIMS, has an org chart associated with it. And that box that's on the website, which shows coordinator, is not shown on what the mayor actually submitted to council. Under the Deputy Administrative Services, there's Finance, Property Services, Information Technology, Human Resources, Intergovernmental Relations, and Assessing. But there is not a separate box that says coordinator on what the mayor submitted to council.
That's really helpful, thank you. I think in the interest of time, just a couple more quick questions, talking a little bit about the city's Labor Management Committee, which Councilmember Goodman and I are also members of, and action steps that have come out of it. I know there's a smaller LMC that meets more regularly. Can you remind us again who makes up that small group of the Labor Management Committee?
Councilmember Palonsano, Councilmember Chaktai, I can send you the list. It's their largest departments. We have Public Works represented there. We have Regulatory Services represented. HR is represented. I am represented on that committee from the management side. And then from the labor side is the ones that has the largest unions, including several Public Works unions, MPEA, and then several of the police and fire unions as well are represented by the same person. And I'm missing one AFSCME, I believe, as well, so
Right.
are represented.
I just ask about the labor side specifically because, I've heard wanting some action steps and follow-ups on some of the culture pieces and workplace safety pieces that have been brought to our attention by CCO staff and wanting that to move through the Labor Management Committee. I just wanted to know if the staff within the city coordinator's office and within the Civil Rights Department who have come forward and testified today if they're represented on the labor side
Yes.
within the small labor management.
I believe they're most MPEA.
That's all. Thank you. I really appreciate it. And then finally, I think just addressing the elephant in the room here, right? We've had over 65 current and former employees of the city sign this letter, many of whom came forward today and presented some public comments, and some very notable names included on that list, including our former Race and Equity Director, Joy Marsh, and the Deputy City Coordinator, Andrea Larson. I want to understand from your perspective, these are the folks who are asking us to listen to the staff on this list, to not move forward with confirming your nomination at this time. But should you be confirmed, how are you planning on rebuilding trust with our staff, and specifically our staff who have spoken out in the last few weeks, and then building a more just and equitable city coordinator's office?
Chair Palmisano, Councilmember Chugtai, a very wise person said to me, you don't want to say rebuilding trust because it's clear from the 6 previous coordinators that there isn't a lot of trust. So the efforts will have to be in building trust. And I intend to do that through conversation, through facilitated conversation, and through time, and through making an action plan together with my staff. And then it's not just, let me just be clear, it's not just my staff. It's a citywide issue. It's an issue that we have to work together as a leadership team within the city of Minneapolis. I think our Division of Race and Equity is going to be a key piece in making sure that we're meeting all those goals.
I appreciate that. I'm going to pass it off to my other colleagues who have some questions.
We have 2 remaining in queue. We have Councilmember Chavez and Councilmember Payne.
Thank you, Chair Palmisano. I had a couple questions, but they were answered today. And I just want to take some time to let my constituents know how I'm going to vote today, which has fluctuated a lot over the past few days. And I just want to say thank you to the city employees that are here today. I know that you're probably scared to be here. I'm scared myself. I know that it wasn't easy to come here and testify in front of a council asking to be heard, and in fact, feeling like you're not being heard today. And I want to let you know that some of us are hearing you, and that I care, and I know that there's promises of no retaliation. I've been on that other side as a staffer. But I want you to know that promises of no retaliation are different from you showing up too late one day here in this institution and being fired for that. I'm going to be watching like a hawk. And I know some of my colleagues on this body are going to be watching like a hawk, so that the day that you show up 5 minutes late, you are not being fired for that. I'm going to repeat that. Commitments of no retaliation are different from showing up too late one day at work and being fired for that. I care. I had a very difficult time making my decision and my vote today. Part of that decision that came into account was hearing from Joy, a constituent of mine, and then hearing the testimony of city staff here today. I had members here today crying. I haven't seen members of this body cry before. I'm trying to hold back my own tears, hearing from our own city staff that they are in pain and that they are scared. I'm sorry that you feel that way. I struggle with disappointment because our own city staff have come to us asking for our help, crying and begging for support, and yet again, feeling like we're not supporting you. To my colleagues on this body, to the council members of color on this body, you all know what we're talking about. That's right. We show up to work, we feel unheard. I've been on the other side of it when I feel like my voice has been shut out the process. Again, I am sorry. I want all of us to recognize the amount of work it took for all of you to come here today to ask for our support. That doesn't come easy. Putting your name on the line is not easy. You may face retaliation, whether not in this job, but outside of this job. We can't take any of this lightly. We're a moment in the city enterprise where we can uplift racial justice, support equity, or do honestly quite the opposite. I have no personal issues with you, Interim Coordinator Johnston. In fact, we've had a good relationship, and you've answered all the questions I've ever asked, and me and you have worked personally well together. But that's not what we are voting on here today. What we're voting on here today is whether we're going to move forward as a city that centers racial justice or not. Whether we're going to listen to our Black, brown, Indigenous, and quite frankly, our city employees or not. I've sat on this dais of people in this body saying that we care about our city staff. And yet today, we're going to listen from our own people, our own council members, that we don't care about city staff. I'm going to repeat that. I appreciate the work of our city staff. And I stand with you unequivocally. Yes, my ward may struggle for taking this vote. And yes, you may struggle for standing up here. But guess what? I care, and I'm here to support you. I was a yes until I continued to hear from my own constituents. I was voting yes on this appointment. I'm no longer doing that. And part of that is because you all came up here, continued to talk to me. My own constituents writing letters to the editor and hearing their own experience here as city staff. Again, I'm sorry that you have to sit up here and ask for our help. That should not be the case. And I'm sorry that I, at some point, was going to vote yes. But no matter what happens here today, know that some of us up here care about you, and that we're going to do the right thing, no matter what happens to us by making this decision. Thank you.
This is just another session to support.
Councilmember Payne.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm struggling with how I should address this. Because we're talking about systemic issues, and this isn't personal. But for me, it is deeply and profoundly personal. The reason I'm sitting up here today and not on the floor with the rest of my colleagues is because the day that I decided to run for city council is the day that I saw someone I admire cry as they were leaving the city on medical leave to take care of their emotional and mental health and physical health, because this place was so toxic. And we were trying desperately to change the way things are from the inside by working within the system to launch a mental health response, despite the arguments about defund or abolish. We were at work getting this amazingly successful team launched that everybody wants to celebrate now and wants to put on PR press releases and say, look at this, we didn't even need a question two. We didn't need a Department of Safety, Public Safety. We got this really successful mental health team despite that. While all the while, when I was working on launching that team alongside with my colleagues, we were getting undermined and sabotaged. And my only resolution to this, because this is a systemic problem in the coordinator's office, I was a contractor. I couldn't even report this to HR, the type of racism that I was personally experiencing. So my only resolution was to run for city council. What does it take to be heard? And when I met with you one-on-one, I said, I want to work with you to address the systemic issue and not make this personal. And one of the systemic issues is this process by which we get through a black box process, a nomination, and 1 hour to have a conversation. That's systemic. That is not personal. And I said, I want to see us pursue this differently. I want to see us maybe delay, have some time to work with staff and come to an agreement. I even offered to facilitate that conversation coming from the coordinator's office. These are my friends. These are my personal friends. I've done the best work of my entire career working alongside Jonathan and Gina and Brian and other people who have signed that letter who are not in the room right now. The best work of my career. My brother got bashed in the head over the weekend because he's bipolar and he was having a manic episode and he was at a nightclub and there was a misunderstanding because he probably wasn't acting right. And it was a baseball bat because he lives in Taiwan, not America. That would have been a gun if that were here. This is deeply personal to me, to get these mental health responders out in the streets. This is deeply personal to me that I'm watching my colleagues suffer as they have to, and they don't want to be here. They don't want to be at the dais trying to say, will you hear me? And I want us to listen. And I want Heather to be successful as the coordinator. If we're just going to push this through, this is the system of white supremacy in action. If we're going to just push this through and say, you know, Elliot, the attorneys are saying you shouldn't really share that much about your personal experiences because there might be some legal liability associated with that. That is the system of white supremacy in action. And we're going to have to ask ourselves, are we going to change course or are we going to follow the system as it's designed? Everybody here is really good at their job. When the lawyers are telling us, hey, you're kind of opening up some legal risk, that's our lawyers being phenomenal at what they do, doing their jobs impeccably. And that's the outcome of a systemically racist system, is people giving their best and delivering us racist outcomes. And I want us to change course. This is the first BIPOC majority city council because we just lived through a global lynching. And some of us were so profoundly impacted by that that the only thing that we could do to stay sane and not wrap ourselves up in the fetal position crying was to step into these most uncomfortable of positions. And I've been trying very desperately to work with my colleagues to say, can we at least do this differently? Can we delay it? Can we work with staff? Can we transform this process so that we can have a different approach? And I still would welcome making a motion to delay this a cycle, but I'm not hearing that that's really all what people want to do, or delaying it until an investigation is over, because I'm not hearing that's what people want to do. So all that I can do is share my story and vote no. That's what I can do. And that's how I'm going to have to vote if we are forced to take a vote today. But I am happy to be an actor in doing things differently and bringing our leadership together with our staff and getting to a different outcome, because I want you to be successful. And I don't want you being appointed with this storm cloud over your head. This is a very long public hearing process. It's not good for you, it's not good for us, it's not good for the staff. What's a different way that we could approach this so that we can come out of this more healed? That's my question. And so I would entertain a motion to delay this if that's an option, but if that's not, I'm a no.
Thank you. I'm not seeing anybody else in queue, and I want to acknowledge it's been a hard afternoon. I hear and thank everyone coming forward today. Some of your testimony was difficult to receive. I think you see that reflected here on this body. And I think we need a couple of days to really sit with this testimony, all of this testimony, and to own staff's criticism and the thoughts that you all shared with us. Thus, my motion will be to move this appointment forward to Thursday without recommendation to full council. This is not a positive or negative recommendation. May I have a second? Is there any further discussion from my colleagues? Not seeing any. So the motion to forward without recommendation, Mayor Fry's nomination of Heather Johnston as city coordinator is before us, and I will ask the clerk to call the roll.
Councilmember Payne.
Nay.
Wansley Worlabath.
Nay.
Rainville.
Aye.
Vita.
Aye.
Ellison.
Aye.
Osman.
Aye.
Goodman.
Aye.
Chugtai.
Nay. Nay.
Thank you. Koski.
Aye.
Johnson.
Aye.
Vice Chair Chavez.
Aye.
Chair Palmisano.
Aye.
There are 8 ayes and 4 nays.
That motion carries. Before we quickly receive reports from committees, we have an announcement from Councilmember Ellison. You have the staff direction that he is proposing for Thursday in front of you, and I will call on Councilmember Ellison to explain.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think all of you have this in front of you. There's been a lot of discussion lately about the Department of Human Rights investigation against the Minneapolis Police Department. And I know that the council has not been as engaged in that discussion. I know that the city, as an enterprise, has been engaged in that discussion. And so my original plan was to invite the state to come and speak before POGO, but after some discussion with the council president, the council vice president, it felt more appropriate for us to create a landing place to engage with the state more consistently. So I'll be bringing forward a motion to amend the resolution that creates our committee structure. We're going to be creating a subcommittee where we can get updates. And I guess I can just sort of read the language here in the staff direction. And so the motion is directing the city clerk to prepare an amendment to resolution number 2022R-001, designating standing and special committees of city council, to provide for a new subcommittee under the purview of the committee of the whole, consisting of all council members, to provide a public venue for the body to receive reports and information, to provide policy level coordination and direction, and to consider and take over appropriate actions, all with the respect to the Minneapolis Department of Human Rights investigation into the city's police department issued April 27, 2022, and to broader matters associated with police reform and accountability. The city clerk is further directed to update the council rules to include this change in the council's organizational structure pursuant to Rule 4, Section 4, subcommittees. And the real intention is to receive presentations, and I think that if actions do come out of the subcommittee, they'll be referred to whatever appropriate committee that action would need to be taken. So just wanted to state my intention to bring this forward on Thursday, and I'm still working out a few details with the council president and council vice president and clerks, but hopefully that's enough information for folks to get started, and happy to stand for any questions if there are any.
Thank you. Finally, we'll receive
Madam
report-
President?
Oh,
I'm sorry, Vice President. So the staff direction is for action today, and what you have in front of you is what the clerk has already preactively given to you as the draft resolution. There are details, as Councilmember Ellison sort of alluded to, but we want to take this action today so that we can bring it forward as quickly as possible on Thursday at full council for a final vote to amend that resolution, update the council rules, and immediately start the work of creating that new subcommittee. So we would want to take a vote right now on the staff direction, which is essentially directing me to do this work, and the draft is before you.
My apologies. I thought we were moving this on Thursday. I'm happy to move this item.
I will second it, and I apologize. That's how I communicated it to Councilmember Ellison. Is it acceptable to do a voice vote on this motion? All those in favor of this staff direction so that we can take action on making this change on Thursday, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? That carries. Thank you for that correction. Now we'll move on to the reports from standing committees, starting with the budget chaired by Councilmember Koski.
Thank you, Madam Vice President. The Budget Committee will be bringing one item for consideration at this week's council meeting, the 2022 City Budget Revisions, American Rescue Plan Act funding. I'll stand for any questions.
Thank you. I'm not seeing any. The next is our Biz Committee that was chaired by Councilmember Osman this cycle.
Thank you, Madam Vice President. The Business Inspection, Housing, and Zoning Committee will be bringing forward 20 items for consideration at the week's council meeting. Item 1, directing staff to submit the 2022 consolidated plan action to the Department of Housing and Urban Development. Item 2, a resolution authorizing Hiawatha Academy's revenue bond pre-funding issuance. This item is moved without recommendation. Item 3, authoring 6 land sale through the Minneapolis Homes Unfunded Property Purchase Rehab Program. Item 4, authorizing 24 land sales throughout the Minneapolis Homes Financing Program, as well as exclusive development rights at 4 additional properties. Item 5, getting consent to the appointment of Saray Garnett Haluhahulu as the Director of Regulatory Services. Item 6, granting consent to the appointment of Andrea Brennan as the Director of Community Planning and Economic Development. Item 7, approving 13 liquor license renewals. Item 8, approving Underground Music Cafe on-sale liquor, general entertainment license, and expansion for their interior premises. Item 9, adopting business license operating conditions for Wild Greg's Saloon and rescinding previous conditions. Item 10, adopting the alternative urban area-wide review for the East Getaway Development Project. And item 11, authorizing Affordable Housing Trust Fund program updates for 2022 notice of funding availability. Item 12, approving amendment to comprehensive plan build form guidance for 2730 First Avenue South. Item 13, authorizing consent amendment with the Minneapolis Public Housing Authority for Stable Homes, Stable Schools program. Appropriating funds for community engagement, pre-development services, demolition services for for the former Kmart and new Nicollet Avenue project. Item 15, approving rezoning at 318 2nd Street North. Item 16, granting the site plan review appeal for 635 Van Buren and adopting Seabed project, granting and adopting finding of fact as prepared for Department of Community Planning and Economic Development. Also approve item 17, approving a rezoning at 635 Van Buren and approving applications submitted by them. Item 18, approving comprehensive street name addition to add Prince Rogers Nelson Way to a portion of First Avenue. Item 19, authorizing commercial property development fund loan at 4601 Lindale Avenue. And last item, item 20, authorizing a commercial property development fund at loan at 600 West Lake Street. I'll stand for any question on these items. Thank you, Madam Vice President.
Any questions? Thank you, Councilmember Osman. I'll pass it to Councilmember Ellison with Pogo.
That was a long one.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. The Policy and Government Oversight Committee will be bringing forward 19 items for consideration at this week's council meeting. Item number 1 is the appointment of the city assessor, Rebecca Malmquist. Item number 2 is confirming the Transgender Equity Council appointments. Item number 3 is authorizing the collective bargaining agreement with ASME Attorney Unit. And this is 2 contracts, one through 2020 through 2021, and the other from 2022 to 2024. Item number 4 is the passage of a resolution transferring funds from the Housing and Rent Stabilization Work Group. Item number 5 is the passage of a resolution transferring funds from the 2022 City Coordinators Division of Sustainability to the Health Department for Green Cost Share and STEM Pathways programs. Item number 6 is authorizing an agreement with the 927 Building LLC and Tri Construction for 927 West Broadway. Item number 7 is accepting a bid for Minneapolis Convention Center elevator modernization. Item number 8 is accepting a bid for 2022 large diameter cured in place pipe project. Item number 9 is accepting a bid for the Target Center freight elevator modernization. And item 10 is accepting a bid for the 16th Avenue North Safe Routes to School project. Item number 11 is accepting a bid for the Fridley Campus medium voltage adjustable frequency drives and variable frequency drives. And item 12 is authorizing contracts with Canva US Inc. for design software services. Item number 13 is authorizing contract amendments with Canal Street Limited Partnership for Neighborhood and Community Relations leased office space in the Crown Roller Mill building at 105 Fifth Avenue South. Item 13 is authorizing contracts with the TXI Systems Inc., DBA Tow Exchange Inc. for towing management software and services. Item number 15 is authorizing contracts with the Cleaver Architecture LLC for impound lot improvement. Item number 16 is authorizing exclusivity agreement extension with U.S. Solar for the purchase of renewable energy credits. Item number 17 is approving a legal settlement, City of Minneapolis, City Parking LLC versus the City of Minneapolis et al. Item number 18 is approving a legal settlement of Jaleel Stallings versus Andrew Biddle. This is for additional attorney's fees. Item number 19, lastly, is approving a legal settlement with the Catholic Mutual Relief Society of America versus the city. And with that, I'll stand for any questions.
Thank you. Not seeing any questions. Next, we have the Public Health and Safety Committee chaired by Councilmember Vito.
Thank you, Madam Vice President. The Public Health and Safety Committee will be bringing forward 4 items for consideration at this week's council meeting. Item number 1 is authorizing contracts with neighborhood organizations qualifying for the Neighborhoods 2020 Shared Resources and Collaborations Fund. Item 2 is authorizing a site agreement with Reading and Math, Inc., DBA, Impact for AmeriCorps members. Item 3 is authorizing a host site agreement with the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency for Minnesota Green Corps program members. And item 4 is accepting the Justice Assistance Grant for Police Department and City Attorney's Office support. That concludes our business.
Thank you. Last but not least, we have Public Works and Infrastructure Committee that was chaired by Councilmember Koski last cycle.
Thank you, Madam Vice President. The Public Works Infrastructure Committee will be bringing forward 5 items for consideration at this week's council meeting. Number 1 is passage of ordinance revising the water and sewer code. Number 2, approving the reallocation of funds in the 2022 capital improvement program. Number 3, authorizing a master partnership agreement with the Minnesota Department of Transportation. Number 4, passage of a resolution supporting the West Broadway route alignment for the Blue Line Light Rail Transit extension and submitting City Minneapolis comments on the route modification report to Hennepin County and the Metropolitan Council. And then number 5, layout approval, easements, repealing a one-way street, and a staff direction relating to the Hennepin Avenue South Street reconstruction project. I'll stay on for any questions.
Thank you. Not seeing any questions. And with that, we've concluded all the business to come before the committee today. We've gone over 3.5 hours, so thank you all for hanging in there with us. If there's no objection, I will declare this meeting adjourned. Thank you.